Alright, legends. Hirosaki Waiti here, and you already know it's time for another mind-blowing series. Welcome to What If Spider-Man Was Transported to My Hero Academia? Part 1. After an encounter with one of the Infinity Stones, Spider-Man finds himself placed in a new world of superheroes. Mysteriously, he becomes enrolled in U.A, a high school created for teaching upcoming heroes. When he discovers the Infinity Stones have become lost in this world, somehow still retaining their power, he must find them before his new friends get caught in the crossfire. Like goal, 50 likes, let's smash it to drop the next part. And if you're new, hit subscribe and become part of the Ultimate Heroes, because this series is only getting crazier. Big shout out to Spider-Man, Hero Academia by Time Lord 2024, the mastermind behind this epic concept. Go check out the full story on fanfiction.net. No more waiting, let's dive into the action. Chapter 1, Rookie, Part 1. In response to a powerful blow, the arachnid hero skid backwards 2 or so yards, his fingers dragging against the concrete street to slow down. The move nearly ripped his red and blue costume, being only fabric-based materials. He held the right side of his chest with his hand, trying to numb the pain with pressure. Through his mask, no one could see how hard he was sweating unless they looked closely as it bled through. Still, despite what he faced, he kept his ground and stood tall, his arms in an L position parallel to his waist. In front of him stood a tall and dangerous foe. The large man was well built, standing at 6 or so feet. His skin was a shade of leaf green, with his ears pointed up. He wore a bodysuit that covered only his torso and lower area. Veins showed from his muscles, which had grown to an unhealthy size. His shoulders shot fire into the air, as his palms held some in a ball shape. This was not how he wanted to start his morning. "Come on, Gabi!" shouted the arachnid hero, "can't we take the day off from being mortal enemies? I've got a science test that I need to pass, and if I miss it, that'll ruin my whole schedule." "Always the talker, aren't you, Spider-Man?" said the monster. "Unfortunately, I'm not here for you." What?" Spider-Man whined, "You're cheating on me? Don't tell me there's a. Who would want to marry your ugly mug, much less spend a night?" His taunts angered the goblin as he charged forward with flames in hand. As he threw his fist forward, Spider-Man jumped into the air, keeping his hands on the goblin's arm. However, even as the ringing in his head shot off, Goblin quickly turned and kicked him away, sending him crashing into a truck and denting its side. Gravity sent him to all fours, coughing from the impact. Goblin began to approach him again. Spider-Man coughed, "This is ***, clearly becoming an abusive relationship, and I want a divorce." Goblin slams his fist down, which Spider-Man manages to catch with both hands. The pressure built by Goblin's strength caused the ground beneath the hero to crack and falter. He could have easily swatted him with his free hand, but the monster wanted to play with the bug. "You honestly think you can keep this up forever?" Goblin taunted. "You honestly think you can keep this up forever?" Spider-Man mimicked, deepening his voice. Just as Goblin was to swat him away, a light peered brightly on the two combatants. The light source was a ship hovering just above them, a massive A painted on the side. Goblin looked back at the ship and smiled, throwing Spider-Man to the side with a thud. The hangar door for the ship opened, and a costumed hero stepped out of it. It was a man dressed in military clothing, color-coded with the American flag. On his left arm was a circular shield, with the flag's design and symbol adapted on the surface. From above, the ship flew in 2 figures. One wore old-fashioned armor plating, and a hammer swung in his hands. The other was completely covered in red and yellow armor, with jets blasting from his boots to keep him in the air. Finally, Goblin said, holding his arms out, "The Avengers. I've been waiting for you." Spider-Man Academia. Chapter 1, Rookie, Part 1. It took a lot just to get your attention, but it seems like it paid off. A crowd had gathered, though they kept their distance from the super-powered fighters. The battle between Goblin and Spider-Man had been raging throughout Times Square, the busiest part of New York in terms of people passing through. However, now most of the area was empty, closed in by blocks of people. Tables and vehicles were abandoned when the monster showed up to cause chaos. It took the Avengers 10 minutes to respond, while it only took the arachnid 5. Spider-Man got to his feet, holding one of his knees as it had been scrapped and bleeding. He felt a lot more comfortable with the situation now that the Avengers had arrived. He figured they would, with the scene Goblin was causing. Still, any longer and he would have been hurt a lot worse. "Kid, you alright?" The man in full armor spoke, calling out to the young hero, "Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Mr. Stark." He shouted back, giving a thumbs up. He was thankful. With the Avengers' arrival, this should go a lot smoother. Had he continued to fight alone, he would most definitely have been late to school, missing the morning bell. He had been on his way there when the destruction had started, and he always kept his suit close to him. He just hadn't expected it to be him. Though he joked a lot, it was hard for him to keep his cool around this monster of a man. With a sinister grin, the goblin rushed forward for the Man of Iron. As the tingling in Spider-Man's brain went off, he quickly pressed his two center fingers against his palm. Out of his wrist shot a sticky substance that stuck to the villain's back. His motion was immediately stopped as the hero with the shield came in and whacked him across the face. The goblin was then tackled by Stark and pinned to the ground. "Anything you got to say, pal?" Stark said, pinning him down with his incredible armor. The beast only smiled. "Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. I know everything I need to know about each of you. Your strengths, your weaknesses. Including," he opened his palm, "the temperature limit of your armor." Fire released in a fury of chaos, hitting Iron Man at point blank. His armor heated up, causing him to sweat from the inside. Using his jet boots, he immediately retreated from his position and landed a few yards away. "Foul beast!" Thor shouted, swinging his hammer around, "I have slain stronger men than yourself. Have at thee." From his hammer shot a bolt of lightning, crackling through the streets. However, Goblin dodged the attack with barely a scratch. He moved so fast, anyone who blinked couldn't see him until he was gone from the spot. Thor didn't have time to react as the monster's fist collided with his head, sending him far from the jet. "Now's my chance," said Goblin, as he hopped onto the jet's door and climbed inside. "What's he doing?" shouted Iron Man as the jet doors closed. The green monster climbed into the pilot's seat and started pushing buttons, pulling the seat forward. Images appeared on a holographic screen, and a list of locations popped up. Just as he was about to select one, the ship started to tip in several directions, as it shook all around him. Just outside, Iron Man was attempting to blast the door open, but it had no effect. "You fools fell right for my trap," Goblin said, punching in a set of coordinates. "Goodbye for now, Avengers." As the ship tried to take off, Spider-Man shot a web at the back of the engine. There was no way that he would allow the monster to escape again. He couldn't allow him to win over the heroes over and over. Spider-Man pulled with everything he had, but the ship started to lift him up with him. His eyes went wide when he realized his feet were no longer on the ground. "Mr. Stark," he called out. "I got you, kid." Iron Man flew up and wrapped his arms around Spider-Man's torso, attempting to fly backwards and pull both him and the ship down. "Thor, push from the front," Iron Man shouted. Thor swung his hammer and flew to the front of the ship, landing on the front window hammer first. The glass, however, did not break or even crack. Still, he attempted to fly forward and push on the ship. It had begun to float closer to the ground the more effort the heroes put in. Inside the ship, the alarms were going off as Goblin struggled to push the right buttons. One button was covered in a glass case, which quickly caught his eye. Removing the glass, he read the inscription and quickly pushed the button. Suddenly, the ship took off at high speeds, knocking Thor out of the way. The sudden momentum caused Spider-Man to release his web and nearly fall to the ground before being caught by Iron Man. Finally, the wind stopped, and the air was clear. Spider-Man stood and looked around at the destruction he helped create, and he couldn't help but feel guilty. His fists clenched, suddenly dropping his usual campy attitude and diving into his own personal thoughts. Had he only been faster and stronger, he could have helped to subdue Goblin. Instead, he stood by and watched as Earth's mightiest heroes fought a battle that was his alone to finish. And once again, the monster escaped his grasp. "Kid," said Iron Man, walking up to him and removing his faceplate, revealing the man underneath, "we're going to call for another jet. Till it gets here, I need you to tell me everything you know about that monster. We need to know what we're up against." That monster, he called it. The sad thing was that he was a monster, just not in the traditional sense. The man under the beast plagued the boy under the mask. In a way, they created each other. So, anything he does becomes the young hero's responsibility. "Kid, you listening?" Stark said again. Spider-Man's attitude returned in an instant. "Who, Gobby?" Rich guy turned crazy monster, annoying, likes fire. Definitely don't want to sing campfire songs around him. Kid, this is a series. He stole the Quinjet for who knows why. Does he have any weaknesses? Spider-Man relaxed his muscles, putting his jokes on hold. Energy. Probably Thor's hammer and thunder would do the trick best. But he's got enhanced speed and strength. In a fistfight, Cap might be the best, so we just have to get in close. Captain America approached them, putting his shield on his back. We can't let him get the mobile advantage. If I can keep him cornered, Thor can deliver a thunderstrike. Indeed. Thor flew down to greet them. We must find this beast and smite him before he hurts anyone else. That beast, Spider-Man interrupted, is also a very smart individual. Whatever he's planning requires the Quinjet, that's why he drew you out. It was clear Spider-Man's connection with the Green Goblin was very personal, otherwise he wouldn't so easily drop his carefree attitude. There was something about the beast that got under the young hero's skin and boiled his radioactive blood. He was tired of losing to the Goblin over and over again. Every time they faced, Goblin always either got away or nearly beat him to death. He couldn't let him win this time, not with the Avengers involved. We need to follow him and stop him before he does whatever he's planning. He has access to the Quinjet and whatever may be on it, and that's dangerous in his hands. I get it, kid, Stark said, but it's best to let the Avengers handle this. Taking down monsters is what we do best. I have to go with you. Spider-Man shouted, surprising his mentor greatly. He's my responsibility, Mr. Stark. I need to help you stop him. Stark sighed and looked intently at the young hero. Peter, he said, addressing him by his true name, this will be dangerous. We don't know where he may be going. Wherever we end up, we may end up facing more than just him. Are you sure you're up for that? Without a second of hesitation, he nodded. Stark tried to stare him down, but it had no effect. Spider-Man was young and stubborn, much like how he was years ago. Even now, Stark considers himself quite stubborn in any situation. So, he knew nothing was going to stop Spider-Man. He'd likely just find his own way to Goblin without them. This way, at least he can keep him safe. If we're gonna do this, Stark pressed a few buttons, a holographic keyboard projected from his arm. You're gonna need some leverage. A boom erupted from the sky, and Spider-Man felt the tingling in his head again. He took a step forward just as a small pod landed right behind him. The pod was no bigger than a bowling pin, but it still managed to crack and pierce the ground. The pod opened, and inside it was a red watch, with a single button on the side of it. Put that on, and don't use it until I say so. Okay? Spider-Man turned to face him, carefully strapping the watch tightly onto his wrist. Let's get going. Following the arrival of the pod, a new ship hovered out of the sky. It was nearly identical to the Quinjet, minus a few paint details. The back door opened and touched the ground, only barely. Thor and Captain America were the first to enter. Spider-Man followed Stark closely, looking back at the damaged street as the door closed. I really should have gone to school today, Peter thought, as the ship took off at high speeds. Chapter 2, Rookie, Part 2. The ship cut through the clouds like a knife through butter. It caused a boom as it roared under the moonlight. It had been at least 2 hours since the takeoff, but it wasn't a time to rest. Peter sat with his mask off, resting his back against the wall of the jet. Thor had been standing in the other corner with his arms crossed, possibly psyching himself up for the coming battle. Captain America had been piloting the ship, while Iron Man was checking the contents of his armor. Everyone looked like they had done this 100 times before. He felt so out of place. This wasn't the kind of world that he was used to, but it's one that he needed to dabble in. Without his mask, Peter's fear showed on his face. Holding his mask, he could see his well-cut brunette hair through the reflection of the eyes. His blue eyes shined parallel to the lenses, almost symbolically. Even with his powers, there are still things in the world that he greatly fears. The Goblin is among this great fear, always making him twitch and worry. Every time they've fought, he's barely escaped with his life. I can't let him win this time, Peter thought. This is my fault after all. I need to be the one to fix this, right? His gaze moved to Iron Man, who was putting his armor back on, fully calibrated. Everyone looks so ready to do this. But not me. I know what's coming our way. I know who the monster is and what he's capable of. That's why I need to do this. Though he tried to convince himself this was right, of course he had doubts. His fear told him to run away and take that science test that he missed. But he can't, because no matter what he feels, he must follow his gut. "We're here," said Captain America. "This is where the other Quinjet's tracker is transmitting from." The ship came into view of a large complex, surrounded by rock and desert. It held the appearance of a highly fortified prison, hidden in plain sight. It consisted of 3 main complexes, with smaller warehouses scattered all about. It was hard to see this late at night, being most of the colors matched that of the landscape surrounding it. All Peter knew was that this place was a covert SHIELD-operated prison for superpowered individuals. The Avengers couldn't tell him much else beyond that. He didn't even know where they were, they wouldn't tell him. Cap clicked on the mic sticking out of the control console, and spoke into it. "This is Captain America of the Avengers, piloting Quinjet 5, requesting permission to land, over." There was no answer for quite some time, so Cap tried again. "I repeat, this is Steve Rogers, alias Captain America of the Avengers. I request permission to land, over." Still no answer. "Something's off," said Stark. "They would have answered by now." Peter stood from his spot and moved toward the pilot's seat curiously. It was likely Goblin had already infiltrated the prison. With a Quinjet, he could have gotten in without a fight. Suddenly, the tingling feeling in his head returned. Colors in his vision shifted slightly, as he felt every molecule around him. He never always knew what it was trying to tell him, but for once he went with his gut. Grabbing the wheel of the pilot's seat, he yanked it to the side and caused the ship to tilt drastically to the right. Just as it did, a massive missile flew by, clipping the wing of the jet and causing its balance to falter. Cap took the wheel back and flew the ship forward, just as missiles continued to fire. "Kid!" Stark shouted, "Use your spider sense and tell us when to move, we're flying blind out here." "Got it," he said, moving close to where Cap was sitting. The ship dodged and weaved through the storm of missiles, each targeted at the same thing. They came in bundles of 3 or 4, spreading out the closer they came. "Left!" Peter shouted. Cap pulled the wheel to the left and the ship quickly turned, dodging a barrage of missiles. "Nice work, kid," Cap said. "With attacks like this, it's likely the Goblin has gotten into the main control room. He could release all the prisoners kept there if he wanted. And that's bad news for us. Tony," he turned his head to face Stark, "we might need to call this in. Backup might benefit us." "Let's see what we're dealing with first," said Tony. "He caught us by surprise earlier, but we're ready for him this time. Up!" Peter shouted. With Cap distracted by the conversation, he didn't have enough time to pull the wheel up before the missile struck the bottom of the jet. A massive hole erupted in the back, sucking all the air out. Spider-Man's mask, having still been on the floor, flew out the window in a snap. The jet's alarm sounded off with a blinking red light as they all hung on for as long as they could. "This thing is going down," Cap said, standing up and grabbing the parachute hanging on the wall. "We've got to jump." Tony turned to Peter. "Kid, this is where it gets tough. Jump out and press the small button on your watch." "What?" he questioned, using his adhesive abilities to keep from falling out. "Why?" "Trust me," he said, flying out quickly after. Thor followed close behind him, almost eager to jump out as quickly as he could. Cap kept himself to the wall, leaning on it as he made his way to the hole in the ship. "Come on, kid. We can't be in here when it crashes." Cap jumped out, being pulled out by the wind. Peter crawled over to the hole as carefully as he could, and let the wind carry him out. Spider-Man Academia. Chapter 2, Rookie, Part 2. All he could see was a blur of colors as he fell from the sky. He twisted and turned in all directions, unable to regain his composure. His spider sense was going off constantly, to the point where it began to form into a headache. The only thing he could focus on was his hands, and the watch strapped around his wrist. He tried to grab it, but the wind pushed his hand away, causing him to spin faster. The ground was coming up quickly, he needed to act fast. He curled his body up and grabbed the watch, pressing the button and quickly releasing it. Suddenly a small hole opened on top of the watch. Without any warning, something began to form around it. A type of metal started to compact and form from nothing. It formed around his wrist, creating a bracelet-like gadget. From there it started to form a different kind of material up his arm. It looked like fabric, but it felt like a flexible metal as it traveled up his arm. It reached his chest and traveled up his neck, wrapping around his chin and moving up his face. Instinctively, he closed his eyes as it covered them. He felt it travel down the rest of his body, completely covering him in the material. Opening his eyes, he looked out of the lenses now presented to him. He was able to see almost as clearly as if he wasn't wearing anything. A small ball of cloth suddenly shot out of his back, forming into a parachute and quickly pulling on his descent. He felt disoriented, but quickly regained his composure. He had to blink a few times to focus. As he floated down, he looked at his outfit. It was similar to what he was already wearing, but with several changes. The material itself was very different, feeling much stronger than normal fabric, and on his wrists rested metal bracelet-like gauntlets, likely an interpretation of his web shooters. The normal design of his chest was different, as the red of his suit ended at his chest, rather than his waist. Though there was a thin red line that connected the chest to the boots, as well as his shoulders to his gauntlets, though his hands were now blue. His spider emblem was bigger too, at least 3 times as much. The lenses on his eyes had a blue outline rather than black, and his eyes were able to extend and retract depending on what he's looking at. His web lines remained on the red of the suit, a design he favored and was glad didn't change. He clenched his fists, feeling the fabric of the suit. What is this? Nanotech, you like it? Tony's voice rang in his mask, possibly an earpiece he had installed. It fits to your liking, so as you get older, it'll grow with you. The nanobots are made of vibranium too, the strongest metal on Earth. I took the liberty of making a fresh new design, a sort of twist on your normal outfit. What do you think? What do I think? Spider-Man said with a smile, I think you have too much time on your hands. But I'll admit, it's amazing. What can I do? You'll figure that out with time. It'll serve as extra protection and that's what matters. Land near the entrance, we'll meet you there. Copy that. Grabbing the straps of the parachute, he shifted his momentum toward the entrance of the prison, landing carefully on the other side of the gate. The parachute retracted perfectly into his suit, leaving no trace of any opening for it to appear. It's likely the fabric of the parachute was nanotech as well. Finally, on the ground, he took a moment to admire his new suit in a nearby window reflection. The new design was slim and comfortable. Tony clearly put some thought into it. The Avengers approached him, having landed only a moment before him. You look good, kid, said Iron Man. We're gonna split up and search the facility. At the first sign of trouble, call us and we'll come running. Same goes for everyone else. Let's get moving before he gets away, Cap said, pulling out his shield and walking in a random direction. Whoever finds the beast claims the right to smite him, said Thor as he flew away. Kid, Tony addressed him, don't fight alone. With that, he flew away, leaving the arachnid hero alone. The state of being he was used to. His mind wandered as he walked through the empty facility. It was likely that Goblin had taken out many of the personnel upon his arrival. He just hoped that no one was dead, or that would be more blood on his hands. He swung through the complex on his web, entering a weapons facility. It was dark inside, the only lights coming from tubes that held different weapons. Every weapon was unique, so they were likely confiscated from the villains they imprisoned. It's way too dark in here, he said. As if on voice command, his lenses lit up in a sky blue color. From his view, his sight had been switched to night vision. Now, he could see every detail of the area around him. Geez, you really overdid it, Mr. Stark, he grinned. He appreciated that Tony would go through this much effort for him. He's always been a sort of mentor to him, teaching him new tricks and lessons. He never admitted it, but sometimes he saw him as a good father figure. Though, he only doubts it because he rarely sees him. Tony is an Avenger, after all. He has to protect the world. He has so much respect from the people, everyone loves him. But things are different for Spider-Man. The city of New York hates him and would rather hang him than give him a trophy. The news always portrays him as a villain, but all he ever does is help people. His spider sense tingled again, causing him to take his surroundings more seriously. He heard footsteps, and the sound of a door opening somewhere down the hall. Quickly, he jumped to the ceiling, sticking to it with ease. He looked down the hall and saw the open door, a light shining out of it. It was bright enough to shut off his night vision. He began crawling, keeping his body close to the ceiling and his eyes on the door. You won't get away again, Peter thought. He crawled into the room, jumping to the darkest corner and observing the scene. The Green Goblin stood before a massive tube, as he pressed buttons on the console below it. Inside the tube was a large golden glove, with 6 slots on the knuckles. Surrounding the room were 6 smaller tubes, each with a stone inside. It was the Infinity Gauntlet. At the beginning of the universe, there was nothing. Goblin suddenly spoke aloud. Then, the Big Bang created these 6 stones. The stones of space, reality, power, mind, soul, and time. No one person can wield all 6 without the proper gear. That's where this gauntlet came into play. Once wielded by the mighty Thanos, destroyer of worlds. Now, it is within my grasp, he grinned, and turned around, and you think you can stop me from taking it? Spider-Man leapt down, keeping a defensive position. I doubt those meaty hands of yours could even fit into that gauntlet. I'm surprised you followed me all the way here, Wallcrawler. Goblin smirked. Perhaps you're more capable than I thought. No wonder you stole the Quinjet. You wanted the coordinates to one of SHALD's prisons for superpowered beings, just so you grabbed the Infinity Gauntlet. You're as perceptive as a squirrel finding an acorn. You can only see what's on the surface. S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers decided to keep the most powerful weapon in the universe inside a prison such as this one. Someone was bound to steal it eventually, and that just gives you the right, does it? Is that how things work in that twisted head of yours? He mocked. Goblin clenched his fists. Yes. He swung his arm forward, causing a ring of fire to emerge. Spider-Man jumped quickly over the flames as they struck the 6 tubes containing the Infinity Stones. Each one broke, sending the stones to the ground. The closest ones to the goblin were that of power and space. As Spider-Man landed on his feet, he shot a web to the wall behind his enemy and pulled himself forward. Quickly he threw a punch to his jaw, following it up with a backflip kick. As he tried to rush forward with both fists, Goblin caught them and threw him into the air. Spider-Man stuck to the ceiling, then leapt back down. As he came in for a punch, the gauntlet on his wrist suddenly started glowing sky blue. As his fist collided, it released an energy wave that pushed a great amount of force on Goblin, causing the ground below them to crack as he fell to his knees. Spider-Man recovered, examining his arm. A kinetic energy holder? That's what these are? Oh, Mr. Stark, you are awesome. He took a stance. Come on. What else have you got? Wiping the blood off his face, Goblin stood up again, reaching behind him and grabbing the Infinity Gauntlet from its case. Just as he managed to slip it onto his hand, Spider-Man kicked him from behind, sending him stumbling. Goblin threw a hook punch, but Spider-Man ducked under and sent a punch to his elbow. His arm felt tingly and numb for a moment, before he quickly recovered and struck again. Spider-Man backflipped away and landed his feet on the nearby wall. He pushed off toward Goblin, but he was quickly swatted away by the Infinity Gauntlet. He stumbled to the side, barely regaining his stance. With a moment of freedom, Goblin reached down and grabbed the Space Stone, placing it into one of the gauntlet slots. 1 down, he said, 5 to go. You won't be getting the others, Goblin. They aren't for sale. A set of footsteps caught his attention, and Spider-Man quickly looked behind him. It was the Avengers, coming to his aid. Kid, I told you to call us. Tony called out. His spider sense tingled in his head, and he turned forward to see Goblin coming his way, and fast. The Avengers were going to be hurt if he didn't stop his attack. Without thinking, he ran forward. Kid, no! Tony shouted again, attempting to fly forward to stop him. Spider-Man leapt forward. I'll send him to a place he can never escape from, ever again. Osborn, he shouted. Parker! Goblin shouted. Spider-Man's fist collided with the Infinity Gauntlet, and a massive explosion resulted. Massive puffs of purple smoke emitted from the scene, as the entire room was overtaken with light. The blast sent the Avengers flying back through the door, knocked to the ground. Iron Man took the hardest fall as he was the closest, landing with a clank. Tony stood on one knee, looking into the smoke. Kid, he called out, Peter. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained. No monster, no hero, no stones. Just an empty room. Iron Man entered the room with a heavy heart, his fists clenching. Peter, he shouted again. But there was nothing, no trace. Tony, Cap approached, the Goblin. He was wearing the Infinity Gauntlet, with the Space Stone. Tony perked up, a hint of hope in his eye, with a single thought, he could be anywhere in the universe, or beyond. So he isn't dead. Just relocated. Yeah, Tony looked forward, but where? Chapter 3, Far From Home. In a burst of purple smoke, a red fist came flying out. Attached to it was the arachnid hero moving in a forward motion. As the smoke cleared, he found himself falling into a forward roll, smacking his back against the wall of a building. He grunted, letting his body collapse to the concrete ground. His vision was blurred by the sudden sunlight, and his new lenses had to adjust accordingly. When they finally did, he used his left hand and pushed on the wall to bring himself to his feet. It was only now his spider sense finally stopped ringing, and he was able to have a moment of silence. He looked around and finally took into consideration that the scenery around him had changed. He was no longer at the SHIELD prison, and it was no longer nighttime. Now, he found himself in the alleyway of a city during the middle of the day. He was shielded from the sunlight by the buildings, casting a dark shade into the alleyway. Overall, though, it was clean with barely any trash on the ground. Spider-Man put a hand to his ear, attempting to turn on the wireless communications built into the mask. "Mr. Stark? Are you there?" He spoke clearly, but he received nothing but static as a response. "Tony, come in." "It's Peter, where are you?" Still, there was nothing for him. Communications with the Avengers were down, so he couldn't expect help from them anytime soon. However, what mattered now was finding out just where he ended up. He looked to the wall he crashed into earlier and started crawling up it with ease. He only needed to attach his fingertips to the wall to scale it up, showing that he had a great amount of strength in his palms. It didn't take him long to reach the top and stand where he could see the city. It didn't look like New York, as the buildings were designed very differently. Looking down into the streets, he hoped to get a better view of where he was based on the people and stores. It became clearer when he saw the signs pestering the stores. The language written on them he could only guess was Japanese. The people walking in and out of the stores were mostly Asian as well. Was he in Japan? How did he get all the way out here? But then it was obvious, when his fist collided with the Green Goblin, he had the Space Stone. That stone allows for travel to anywhere in the universe. Why he ended up in Japan was a real mystery, but supposedly it could have been random. Then another thought crossed his mind. "Goblin," he thought, "if I'm here in Japan, where did he end up? Is he somewhere in this city? If he was, then that meant trouble for him, especially if he has one of the Infinity Stones. Without backup, fighting the Goblin would be difficult for him. Whether he admitted it or not, he was far stronger than him in every way. The Avengers had to locate him eventually, but he couldn't rely too heavily on that theory. So, for now, perhaps it was best to make the most of his situation. Going to Japan was something he always thought about doing. After all. He heard a loud crash in the distance, and a puff of smoke erupted into the sky. People's screams were immediately heard, as his spider sense tingled. No matter what country he was in, hero business was the same. He knew what he needed to do, one way or another. Quickly he shot a web from his wrist and attached it to a building across the street. Once he jumped off the ledge, he began swinging down the streets, shooting off one web after another to keep his momentum. As he swung to the next corner, he released his web at the peak of his momentum and let gravity carry him the rest of the way. Landing, he perched himself on the nearest building wall and stuck there, observing the scene below. The civilians were running in a panic from whatever was inside the cloud of dust. It was tough to make out, but once the figure stepped out, he knew exactly who it was. Standing there, tall and proud, was a villain known as the Rhino. His build was tall and wide, but just small enough to fit into his rhino costume, which consisted of leather and metal plating. The Rhino? What's he doing all the way in Japan? He doubled back. Then again, I can say the same for myself. Either way, I better stop him. Leaping down to the surface level, he was just about to address the villain with a witty remark. However, suddenly a massive tree branch flew past him, stretching and bending as it traveled. It grabbed the Rhino's leg and gripped it tightly. Though it tried to pull on him, Rhino easily broke it with a single stomp. "Damn!" A voice shouted behind him. Spider-Man turned around and observed the hero. It was someone wearing a skin-tight dark blue suit, with brown armor on his joints and feet that looked strangely like the bark of a tree. His face was completely covered by a mask of the same material, his eyes being the only thing shown. Spider-Man watched as the branches retracted back into his arm, and he took a defensive position. Spider-Man had never heard of any super-powered heroes in Japan. Then again, he never bothered to do the research. With the arrival of the new super-powered being, a crowd began to emerge. Rather than run away, people began to cheer and take pictures. Were they that confident that this hero would win against Rhino, or were they just being stupid? "Hey! New guy!" The unknown hero shouted, "I don't know where you came from, but I can take it from here." His overconfidence was a turnoff for Peter. Was this how he sounded to other people? If it was, then it at least does the job of annoying them. The rhino is my problem, Groot. I've taken him down before and I can do it again. His spider sense went off, and on instinct he jumped into the air. Rhino came barreling down his direction, stopping just where he had jumped. The arachnid landed a few yards behind him, staying low to the ground. Rhiny! Spider-Man whined, we were having a lovely conversation about your ugly mug. The rhino turned around and faced Spider-Man, not so much as a grin on his face. I'm not here for you, webhead. But I'm glad I got the chance to squash you, like that will happen anytime soon. He was provoked. With a loud snort and a puff of air, Rhino charged toward the hero again. Spider-Man quickly jumped right over him, landing just behind him and readying himself for an attack. However, the rhino simply kept going in one direction, not bothering to slow his speed. Hey! Where are you going, big gray and stupid? The fight is over here. The other hero moved next to him, a terrified look on his face. He's heading to UA High. The students would be arriving by now. A high school, of course he'd target a place as populated as that. No matter where he may be in the world, villains still target the innocent. Well then, let's not waste time, Groot. A web shot from his wrist, and he slung himself into the air. The other hero shouted at him as he left, my name is Kamui Woods. He swung ahead of the barreling villain and moved toward the school. The building was shaped like an H in its design. The wall separating the building complex from the street sat at roughly 24 foot tall and stood a far distance from the actual building. It was clearly a well-funded school, meaning it likely was well populated. As he came closer, he saw students walking through the front gate, some already halfway to the building. They didn't notice the threat coming their way. Incoming! Spider-Man shouted, grabbing the attention of at least most of the students. Without warning, he shot several webs from his free hand, attaching them to the backs of the teens. Yanking on the strands, the students were pulled up just as Rhino charged through, busting the sides of the gate with the horn on his head. Just as he passed, Spider-Man lowered the webs down and let the kids back onto the ground. Get to safety, he shouted, swinging off the branches of the trees in the complex. He came closer to the building, reaching the fountain in the center of the clearing. Standing there was a young boy, no older than 15. He stood out a bit, given his green hair and smaller body. On noticing the monster, the boy dropped his bag in a startled position. He looked to fiddle with himself, trying to figure out what to do. Rhino didn't care who was in his way, much less who would die. Shooting a web at Rhino's back, he pulled himself forward and flipped his body over, landing in front of Rhino. Emergency stop! He shouted, planting his feet firmly into the ground. The concrete broke as his feet dragged across them, leaving a trail of damage behind them. He tried grabbing the rhino's horn and turning his head to divert his movement. As the vibrations of the struggle surged through them, the kinetic energy built up in the hero's gauntlets, glowing a bright blue within the seams. Finally, the rhino's movement stopped, just before the young boy, who stared at the arachnid in awe. Move, kid! Spider-Man grunted, using his super strength to hold the villain back. The green-haired boy moved from the spot, but he didn't go far. Instead, he made his way to the tree and watched from a distance, pulling out a notebook excitingly. Out of my way, bug! Rhino shouted, throwing his horn up and sending the arachnid flying into the air. As he came back down, he threw both fists against his head, releasing the kinetic energy from his gauntlets. The wave of power pinned Rhino to the ground, dazed for a moment. Ah, is the baby sleepy? Spider-Man taunted, looking around to assess the area. That's when he noticed a golden glow in the fountain. He made his way over and stared down into the school fountain. Drowning in the water was a stone of pure gold, sparkling under the sunlight as it sliced through the liquid. He kneeled and reached in gently, treating the object like a fragile flower. Lifting it up, he brought it close to him as the water dripped to the ground. It was an infinity stone. How did you get here, little fella? He asked aloud. He didn't remember Goblin grabbing the other stones. However, if the blast from their collision was big enough, it could have easily caught the stones as well. There it is, Rhino's voice came behind the spider, his shadow towering over him. He turned around quickly and saw him standing tall, having quickly recovered. I've been looking for one of those stone things. Well, you can buy them at your local jewelry shop. I'm sure your imaginary girlfriend would love a diamond necklace. Rhino lifted his arms and smashed them down, just as Spider-Man leapt and backflipped over the fountain. Rhino's attack crushed the side of the fountain, destroying a part of its structure. The green-haired boy studied the fight and wrote into his notebook. He had never seen these two beings before, so he figured they were very new. Though even if he was fanboying over the scene playing out, he was also genuinely curious and concerned. A villain was attacking the school without any warning, and this new hero came in to protect them. Where did they both come from? He had never seen or heard of this red and blue hero before, so was this his debut? Wouldn't he have read something about him prior? It was hard to focus on a single question as he watched the fight go on. Spider-Man dodged yet another attack, clasping the stone with both of his hands. He couldn't let the stone out of his grasp, especially if the Rhino was looking for it. As the Rhino came charging with his horn, Spider-Man released one of his hands and clasped the stone tightly in the other. Using only one hand, he grabbed the horn and twisted his body, turning the Rhino's direction of travel. After turning him 90 degrees, he pulled back suddenly, forcing the Rhino to trip over his own momentum and end up on his back. The ground cracked and broke on impact, creating a small crater where he fell. When he was down, Spider-Man leapt back to create distance. "I'll crush you, you bug!" Rhino shouted, attempting to get onto his knees. Just as he managed to get up, he was suddenly smashed back down. The cause of which caught the hero off guard, as it appeared to look like a giant fist pinning the Rhino to the ground. The fist was covered by a large purple glove but was still tight around the limb. As the fist released the Rhino, Spider-Man was able to get a good view of the body it connected to. It was a woman, looking to be some sort of giant standing 5 stories tall. Her costume was a collision of purple, orange, and tan colors. The purple sat on her arms, legs and chest, while the tan connected those parts, and separating them were orange highlights. Her mask was a simple cheekbone cover, with horns sticking from her blonde hair. She had a smile on her face as she kneeled and stared at the young arachnid hero. "Hey there, cutie," she giggled, her voice loud as she was gigantic. "What's your story?" Peter was not unfamiliar with people who were giants. A superhero back home had the same kind of ability. It was just strange to see someone else using it. Japan clearly had its own set of superheroes that he wasn't aware of. Hello giant pretty woman," he awkwardly greeted. "Ah well aren't you a sweetheart," she smiled, "my name isn't Milady." "What's your name, new guy?" He composed himself. Even though Spider-Man was naturally confident, his Peter side still shows when he talks to girls. I am Spider-Man, nice to meet you." All of a sudden, the woman's size began to shrink rapidly. She went from being 5 stories high to be a little over 6 feet. The sudden change caused her to be slightly airborne, nearly losing her balance. Spider-Man quickly caught her, to which she gave him a sweet grin. "My hero," she teased. As she stood up straight, a voice caught their attention. "What's going on here?" it said. They turned to see who the voice came from. It was a man in dark clothing, with long black hair to match. Around his neck was a large scarf-looking material. For some reason, his hair was sticking up for a moment before it suddenly went down. He didn't look too friendly, but he also didn't look like he wanted trouble. After all, Peter's spider sense hasn't gone off yet. The man approached them, giving them a stern look that was specifically targeted at Spider-Man. "You're no fun, Aizawa." And to the lady shouted, "Turning off my quirk like that? I could have hurt myself if not for this dashing young hero." She leaned on the young hero, who blushed under his mask. "That's my second concern," Aizawa scolded, staring daggers at him. "I've never heard of or seen this hero before." "So, who are you?" Spider-Man tried to compose himself as the beautiful young lady hung onto his arm. Just before he could speak, the young green-haired boy from before rushed over to them. He stopped just in front of Spider-Man, finding that he wasn't that much taller. "That was so amazing. I can't believe you took him down with one hand. And then how Lady finished him off was wow." He started to fanboy, but Peter found it kind of charming. It wasn't so much obsessive as it was pure passion for something that made him happy. It reminded him of his love for science. Besides, he loved interacting with the few civilians who liked him. "Thanks, kid. I've fought the Rhino before, so I know his tricks." "So, what's your quirk?" the kid asked. "Is it super strength, because you don't look that muscular, yet you went toe-to-toe with him? And then there was that agility." "Midoriya!" Aizawa shouted, silencing the group. "Step aside." Midoriya clearly feared this man, as he immediately did as he asked. When Aizawa approached Spider-Man, he stared him down, even with Lady still hanging onto him. "I've never heard of you. I've never seen you. And that bothers me. So, here are my questions. Who are you, why are you here, and do you have a license? A license? Spider-Man asked. You'll have to be more specific about that. But you can call me Spider-Man. Spider-Man, he said coldly, and what are you doing here? He needed to come up with an excuse, because saying he doesn't know probably isn't a good idea. Well, I am here because. His eyes drifted to the school. He was on his way to school before he got wrapped up in all of this, so it would technically be the truth. I was on my way to school? Oh, empty lady said, I see. So, you're a student here then? An upcoming hero? That makes you what, no older than 15? 16, he said, correcting her. Well, I do like young men, she cooed, means I get to keep them longer. He was about to question where this flirting lied, but then remembered that things worked differently in Japan. The legal age of consent was 13, so dating someone around the age of 15 was normal. That aside, it wasn't normal for him as she was likely about 20. Until lady, please, Aizawa pushed. He can't be a student here because I am a teacher, and I've never seen him on campus. Spider-Man raised his hand. I'm wearing a mask. I've memorized the quirks of all my students, as well as those I don't teach. I haven't seen yours. You shot webs from your wrist, predicted your enemy's movements like a sixth sense, and had strength proportional to yourself. He was awestruck by his analysis. Wow, you're good. The only way you could be a student here is if you were a transfer, or a student from abroad. Either of those correct? Ah, well. He had a feeling that if he didn't give a good answer, it would cause a lot more trouble. He just needed to say whatever he could to escape the situation. I'm a transfer from America. I'm taking a semester abroad, here at UA. As he came up with his excuse, he suddenly felt a burning in his hand. It came from the hand still holding the Infinity Stone. Was it reacting to something? Why was it getting so hot? You realize, Aizawa said, that if you're a student, then you have no right to harm the villain without a license. Spider-Man tilted his head. Really? Works differently back home. I'll let him off easy, Aizawa, and the lady pushed. If he's foreign then he needs to learn the rules. Simple as that. Make it a warning and call it a day. Just as she finished, Aizawa pulled out a cell phone and dialed a number. When it started ringing, he put it to his ear. Yes, it's me, he said. I need you to look something up. Are we expecting any students from abroad to spend a semester? Peter became scared. He needed to think of a way to escape these people, but with MT. The lady is still hanging on to him, which may be difficult. She could easily grow and catch him if he tried to escape, depending on if she wanted to catch him. I see. Aizawa continued, thank you. With that he hung up, and stuffed his phone into his pocket. It seems we've been expecting you, Mr. Parker. Spider-Man utterly froze. What? That's you, right? Peter Parker. Quirk, Spider. Can do anything a spider can to a certain extent. Alias chosen, Spider-Man assigned to Class 1A. He had no idea what to say. He was bluffing his way through the conversation, but they've been expecting him. How is that possible? There shouldn't actually be any records of his arrival, much less with all that information. On another note, why did he call his powers a quirk? And what do his powers have to do with this school? MT Lady asked if he was a student and an upcoming hero. Does that imply that this school was for people with superpowers, like Xavier's School for the Gifted? Mr. Parker, make your way to the principal's office before homeroom. We'll give you your school outfit, and we'll get the final paperwork figured out. Aizawa started to walk away, without as much as another care to give. Wait, Mr. Aizawa, Midoriya said, Class 1A is already full. How would we fit him in? Aizawa didn't bother to stop moving as he answered, I'll explain it to you during homeroom, so don't be late, Midoriya. As he left, Midoriya approached him, I can't wait to work in class with you. I have so many questions about your quirk. Right. Spider-Man said, still processing everything. At this school, for superheroes, he half questioned, not making it too obvious. Yeah. Totally. Midoriya said loudly, you're gonna love it here. This is where the best upcoming heroes are taught. With a giggle, Emma Lady finally released Spider-Man's arm, taking a step back and putting a hand on her hip. Well, I better get myself back to work. Crime doesn't stop itself, after all, she winked at Spider-Man, blowing him a kiss. When you get your hero license, look me up, cutie. I'll be waiting. She then grew several stories and stepped over the walls of the school complex, making her way back into the city. Spider-Man just stood there, dumbfounded by how all of that went down. What he gathered from this experience was that here in Japan, superheroes with powers are taught in schools like this, then released into the world. Does that make them supervised by the government? That would explain the part about the license. So, he can understand that superheroes have a more thought-out system here. What he didn't understand was how the school had records of him, when he never applied to go abroad. There was no way that could happen out of nowhere. This whole situation doesn't feel like reality. Reality. Turning his back to Midoriya, he opened his hand and looked at the stone. It was yellow, the color of the reality stone. Anyone holding it can alter reality around them however they choose. He was holding the stone when he made the excuse and it started burning. He must have unconsciously used its power to enroll him into the school. Actually, this narrows things down. If the Infinity Stones still work, then the Space Stone didn't send him through the multiverse. Supposedly, the Infinity Stones can only work in the universe they were born in. So, he must still be in the same universe. That much was good to know. With the stones involved, he could have ended up somewhere far worse in the universe. Yet, he's in a version of Japan with a hero system he's never heard of. So, what does that mean? An alternate timeline or dimension? Should he go along with this, especially if he doesn't really have time to deal with it? If the Rhino is here, who's to say there aren't others? But at the same time, he can't go hunting for them without a license. It would likely mean getting arrested. Though he wasn't unfamiliar with running from the police, other heroes could get involved too. This was a very complicated situation, and he needed to play his cards right. Peter, right? Midoriya poked him, trying to get his attention. You should probably head to the principal's office. He turned to him, regaining composure and hiding the stone behind his back. Right. Okay. He was too confused to think properly. There was a chance this was an alternate dimension situation, a concept not too far off. Thor, the god of thunder, was from another realm. This couldn't be too different. For now, he needed to play things safe and go along with it. Gripping the stone tight, he made his way to the school. Chapter 4, 21 total. Just by walking through the halls, he was able to tell just how well funded this school was. Some halls were enclosed, while others were almost outside given either thin or no windows. The hero felt so out of place walking through the halls wearing his costume. All he had underneath was the suit he made, so taking off the top layer wouldn't really do much. Some of the students walking through the halls stared at him with curiosity, and he did his best to ignore them as he continued his search. It was strange to him that he was going along with this. He didn't need to be here anymore. He could easily just head into the city and get to work. He only originally came in here to get away from everyone and think clearly. However, when he started thinking, some scary thoughts came to mind. The Rhino wasn't afraid to attack the school to get what he wanted. These kids could be in danger at any time despite the powers they may have. If Goblin really was here, then it might be easier to work out a plan and operate if he's constantly surrounded by super-powered people. If Peter is attacked, there's an ample amount of backup. In a way, the contents and populace of the school serve as protection. He figured homeroom was going to start soon, so he needed to find the office quickly. Problem was that he didn't know the layout of the school. If he kept on his own, he would likely stay lost a lot longer than he should. He looked around at the students and picked one out, approaching her. She was slightly taller than he was, wearing the traditional female school outfit for Japan. She had ginger hair that was tied into a single ponytail, and blue eyes that shined in the light. When he approached her, she jumped, having not expected a costumed hero to come her way. Goodness! She stumbled. You scared me. Sorry, Spider-Man replied, but do you know where the principal's office is? I need to make my way over there. She took another moment to stare at him, looking his costume up and down. She didn't know why he was dressed up like this, unless he was a pro hero. He sounded young, so that wasn't likely. Down this hall, 2 rights and a left. First door on the right. Thank you, he said simply, quickly beginning to walk. However, he was stopped by her voice. Hey! Why do you need the principal's office? And why are you dressed like that? He stopped and faced her, looking down at his own suit. Well, I'm studying a semester abroad here. I just happened to come wearing my suit. She eyed him suspiciously, but seemed to buy it nonetheless. Which class are you in? Spider-Man put a hand to his chin. I think they said 1A? Her eyes widened in confusion. But that class is already full, she stated. How would you get in? Are they kicking someone out? That's what that Midoriya kid was saying. The teacher said he would explain during homeroom, so I don't know. She put a finger to her chin, pondering the very idea of 21 students in a single class. That does seem odd. I figured 20 was the limit for each class. Otherwise they wouldn't have split 40 students into A and B categories. It makes a lot of people think one class is better than the other. Spider-Man tilted his head. I don't think a letter can decide what kind of hero you are, right? Just because you're A or B, that doesn't make you any more or less than them. Her face turned to surprise, smiling a bit at his compliment. Well, I suppose you're right. She held out her hand. I'm Atsuka Kendo. He took her hand to shake it. He suddenly stopped, thinking about how Aizawa knew his real name. He can't exactly go to this school as Spider-Man, since everyone would know him anyway. Peter Parker. Nice to meet you, Parker. She smiled brighter now. I hope to see you around. You too. He grinned under the mask and walked away from her. He wasn't used to just giving out his secret identity like that, but this was a different situation. He suspected this wasn't the world he knew, since the present was so different than what he was aware of. The Avengers would have known if there was a superhero school in Japan, especially if it's this public about it. At the same time, however, the Infinity Stones were working. The Reality Stone changed things to enroll him into UA, so it still has power. That means this can't be another universe. There must be a different explanation. Until he figures it out, all he knows is that his secret identity isn't really much use in this world, so it was best to go along with its rules. Finally, he reached the principal's office and stared at the door. He had a feeling someone was waiting for him in there, with the papers he doesn't remember signing. Bravely, he opened the door and stepped inside. Ah! Hello? I've been expecting you. The sight that greeted him was one he did not expect. Rather than your average human, sitting at the principal's desk was something that looked like a combination of a dog, mouse, and bear. His overall appearance looked like that of a humanoid-type mink, possessing dog-like paws and a mouse-like tail. There was a scar over his right eye, yet he smiled like nothing was wrong. His height must have been no more than 3 or 4 feet, and he was dressed in a small suit. Spider-Man just stared for a moment as he unconsciously sat down in the nearest seats. To start off this meeting, the principal spoke. My name is Nizu, and I'm aware that I am an animal. He smiled. I'm a rare case where an animal gained a quirk and evolved as such. His voice was very joyful, as if he didn't have a care in the world. Now then, let's get started on finishing your registration. There are a few things that were left out of the papers, so we need to finish those up properly. Is that all right? He still couldn't get over the principal's appearance. Now he was sure this wasn't his world. There's no way they wouldn't have heard of all this. At least if anything, this meeting can confirm that for him, so he can finally calm down about it. That means he really doesn't have to worry too much about his secret identity, at least not within school walls. Nizu placed a small set of papers in front of Spider-Man, patting them gently as he pointed to a pen sitting not a few inches from it. We'll need to fill out housing forms. As it stands right now, you don't have a place of residence here in Japan. I can make some calls to the parents of other students and ask them if anyone would like to take you on. Normally this is done prior, but it seems you may have forgotten. Just sign here and I can start making some phone calls. He picked up the pen and hovered it over the papers as he started reading them. Or tried to, anyway. The problem was that it was all in Japanese, with very little English subtext. It did seem strange that he can understand what everyone says is English, but the writing is still Japanese. Hopefully he can find a way around all of this. Is something the matter? Nizu asked, a smile still on his face. No, well yes, he admitted, I can understand you fine, or what I mean is, I can't read Japanese. Nizu's eyes lit up in understanding. Oh, of course. My apologies. Speaking and reading Japanese are two different skill sets. You must have only picked up one. My apologies. It stood to reason that Nizu thought he was speaking Japanese, even though to Peter everyone was speaking English. This world and its rules were rather strange. Nizu points to a spot on the paper. This here says that you are willing to be placed in the next available household regardless of who I choose for you. You're handing over temporary custody rights to the family in question, and here, he points to another spot, confirms that you are not an official member of Class 1A. What do you mean? Spider-Man asked. Well, the class is already full, total of 20 students. It wouldn't be fair to kick one out just for a temporary member from abroad. However, there is a loophole that we use. You won't be shown on record as an official member of the class, rather you will be sitting in on it. You'll take the same exams and receive the same homework, but these grades will go toward your school in America, the MCU. MCU, he repeated, trying to figure out what the abbreviation would stand for. I see, I guess that makes sense since it's only for one semester. Precisely. If you need any further translations, just say so. He was being straightforward with how this was going to work. Once he signed it, he would begin going to this school. He figured that, again, he didn't have time for this. But this school would still serve as protection while he operated in the city. Plus, he found an infinity stone here. He needs to be sure there aren't other stones here, so being allowed on the school grounds is a must. Really, there are several ways he can convince himself to do this, but he's doing it because he doesn't know what else to do. He's in a foreign world with no idea how to get back. He needs a roof over his head too, otherwise that will make things more complicated. Plus, if he can somehow use the resources in this school to his advantage, then that will benefit him on his task. Taking a deep breath, he signed in the appropriate spots. Nizu immediately took the papers away with enthusiasm, shoving them into a folder. Wonderful, he exclaimed, I'll begin the phone calls immediately. In the meantime, school rules state that you must turn your costume over to prevent the urge to do hero work. It will be returned to you during some of your class times. It would be a lot harder to work without his costume. However, he only had to turn over the one Nizu could see. Peter still had his other suit underneath, along with his web shooters. Of course, even though he lost the mask during the plane crash, he can easily make a new one. I don't have any other cloths. Don't worry. We can provide to you the required school uniform. He hopped off his chair, walking over to the nearby closet. Opening it, he brought over a silver suitcase and placed it on the desk. Just swap your costume for the school outfit inside. Bathrooms are down the hall, so you can change in private. Spider-Man nodded and lifted the suitcase with ease. I'll be right back then. As he made his way to the bathroom, he managed to finally calm his thoughts. This was the best course of action given the circumstances. He needed resources, security, and a home. The school can provide them if he attends. Plus, it will help maintain a cover for as long as he needs to. It would only be until he finally stops Goblin, depending on if he's here. In the bathroom, Peter stepped into the largest stall and opened the briefcase. It was your basic school outfit, proper blue pants and a white collar shirt with a tie. One of them was a gray school jacket to be worn over it. He stood up, attempting to take off his costume. The moment he pulled off the back, it was as though he phased right out of it. The nanobots maneuvered around his skin, letting him slip right out without ruining the suit, or even having to open it. Even the mask remained connected firmly to the neck and torso. He was finally able to get a good look at it now that it was off. Tony really put a lot of effort into it, and it was a very nice design. It would be hard to do his work without a proper suit, but he still had his traditional gear. In his hands, he still held the Infinity Stone. This was a dangerous object, and he couldn't abuse his power. What was he to do with it? He couldn't just pocket it. It's an Infinity Stone. There isn't really a place safe enough to keep it. If anything, it needed to be somewhere he could check on it regularly. Placing it with his normal gear when he hides it will be the best option for now, until he can find a better solution. Folding up the nanosuit, he placed it to the side and removed his normal suit manually. After placing his suits and web shooters to the side, he dressed in the required school uniform. It fit well, perhaps only a little tight around the neck. The shoes felt comfortable too, and the end almost felt steel-toed. Adjusting the edges of the clothing, he then placed the folded nanosuit into the briefcase, locking it up tight. Now he needed to take care of his other suit. He would need access to it, so he can't hand it over to the school. Making his way out of the bathroom, he checked to make sure no one was around. Grabbing the bottom of a set of lockers, he used his super strength to lift it up off the ground. With his other hand, he placed his fabric suit and web shooters underneath, and lowered the lockers back down over it. Hopefully they should remain hidden until he needs them. Peter didn't even need to reach the principal's door before Nizu came out to greet him, taking the briefcase quickly from his hands. Excellent. Homeroom starts in 5 minutes, Mr. Parker. Class 1A is down the hall to the right. I hope you enjoy your time here at UA. He smiled, nodding to the mink. Thank you, Principal Nizu. The warning bell rang in the halls, and Peter began to walk toward the class. He could travel to all the worlds he wanted, but he can never avoid going to school. On the computer screen showed feed for several different cameras, which monitored parts of the school. One camera in particular was moving, following the young brown-haired boy as he wandered aimlessly to find his new class. The screens were the only light beyond what shined through the hotel room window, which had been broken with glass scattered everywhere. The figure stared curiously at the screen, putting her fingers to it where the young hero walked. It was as if they were pointing for emphasis, to ensure what she saw was real. I suppose, she said quietly, I should keep an eye on you. She stood up and walked to the broken window, leaning against the wall as she stared out into the sky. Though even as she tried to get away, her eyes darted back to the screens. She smiled. Stay where I can see you, okay? Chapter 5, Spider Quirk. It didn't take him long to find Class 1A, given the instructions from Principal Nizu. The door was left open and it seemed like there were already people inside. None of them had seen him without his mask, so they likely wouldn't recognize him straight away. He wondered if they were already told that he would be coming, or if this would be a surprise. Either way, he awkwardly made his way into the room, looking at his fellow classmates. There were about 20 people total in the room, each of them different from each other. In fact, not all of them looked as human as the next. One of them, a girl, had pink skin and hair, with small horns on her head. Another had multiple limbs, changing as he pleased. The next looked like a humanoid crow, sitting emotionless at his desk. The rest were pretty much all your basic human, though a select few surprised him. One familiar face was the first to spot him, the boy with green hair, Midoriya. On seeing Peter walk in, he approached him curiously. Hi there, do you need something? Yeah, Peter said, I was told to come this way. This is Class 1A, I believe. You're Midoriya, right? Right as he heard Peter's voice, he suddenly got excited. It's you! He exclaimed, the spider guy. Everyone suddenly turned and looked at Peter as Midoriya spoke. Peter adjusted his collar awkwardly in receiving the looks. Maybe not so loud, UI buddy? Heh, he avoided everyone's gaze, wondering what their next reaction would be. No way, man. One kid shouted, that was you? He approached them, wearing the same outfit as everyone else, though he stood out because of his orange hair with a streak of black. Dude. You totally saved our butts back there. That rhino guy would have crushed us. I'm Denki Kaminari. Nice to meet you. Many of the other students began to circle around Peter, asking him questions about what happened in the schoolyard. They were targeting him from all angles, many with either smiles or blank expressions of curiosity. He managed to recognize a few of the ones he saved from Rhino, but the rest were brand new. As Spider-Man interaction was fine, but it's as Peter that his social anxiety begins to act up. So, what's your quirk? How did you shoot those rope things? How strong are you? Can you lift cars and trucks? Where did you get your suit? Did you make it or did someone else? How many of those rope things can you make? Peter tried to calm them down, but they were asking 1,000 questions a second. He couldn't even find them time to get a word out before the next person started speaking. He was almost starting to freak out, since these aren't questions he's asked outside the mask. Even though he was aware his secret meant nothing here, old habits started to cause anxiety. Hey! Everyone is quiet. A voice in the back shouted. The multiple bodies made room for her as she approached. She stood tall, with black spiky hair tied into a ponytail. The way she moved was elegant and proper, showing a sense of maturity within her. Can't you all clearly see that you're freaking him out? When they looked back at Peter, they finally noticed the panicked expression on his face. Most of them took a step back to let him breathe, quietly apologizing. I'm sorry, the elegant girl said to him, giving him a comforting smile while resting a hand on her chest. This class can get easily excited. My name is Momo Yayarozu, I'm the vice representative of Class 1A. Midoriya said you were joining us. Kind of, Peter said, calming himself down, not officially since the class is already full. It's only for the semester, so my grades go toward my other school. Oh good, she sighed, I was worried someone would get kicked out of the class. People started making bets. My money was on my netta, Denki retorted, firing insults out. Hey! Someone shouted, likely being Mineta. He stood no taller than the principal, perhaps even shorter. The boy's hair looked like giant grapes attached to his head. I have every right to be here too, you know. Sure. Denki retorted, as the class clown. You can't even fight anyone with your power. You wanna bet, Kaminari? Mineta stood from his seat, grabbing one of the grape-looking objects from his head. Pulling on it, it came right off as he threw it toward Denki's direction. It smacked him straight in the head, sticking like super glue. Ack! Come on, man. Denki panicked, trying to remove the object. Darn it. This doesn't count. He pulled on the object as hard as he could, pulling out some eyebrow hairs as he finally removed it with a gasp. However, he realized then it was now stuck to his hands. Damn it, Mineta, he shouted, earning only a snicker from the small hero. You're all a bunch of weaklings. Everyone turned to the back corner of the room, where the voice came from. His hair was spiky blonde, and his overall attitude was dark and gritty. No one was even standing near him as his negative vibe was too strong. An extra student doesn't mean anything, he continued, targeting Peter specifically. I can take him down, no problem. So, don't start praising a zero for actually having value. Ignore him, Momo reassured, that's Katsuki Bakugo. He has a very foul manner. I can hear you. I know. Bakugo stood up. You wanna fight me? Ha? I'll take you on right now. Grow up. Midoriya avoided Bakugo's gaze suddenly. It was subtle, but not enough to go over Peter's head. He could sense that there was some history between them that he wasn't seeing. One of the other students carefully approached Peter with a smile on her face. It was the pink girl that he spotted earlier. Looking closely now, he could see that she had black eyes with yellow irises. Her appearance was likely related to whatever powers she had, same for the other strange-looking students. He wasn't prejudiced, in fact he was very curious about them. Hi there. My name is Mina Ashido. She shook his hand strongly, gripping them tight. I have the power to shoot corrosive acid from my body. And I was just wondering what your quirk was? She smiled brightly, inching a bit closer. You didn't notice, but I was one of the ones you saved with that rope ability of yours. Not only do I thank you for that, but I really want to know what else you can do. So, she suddenly hugged him tightly. Thank you. It was startling at first, but he actually liked the recognition. He doesn't often get thanked for saving people, he's usually blamed for them needing saving at all. Politely, he hugged her back with a smile. You're welcome, Mina. I am rather curious myself, Momo joined in. What exactly is your quirk? My quirk? He questioned as Mina's hug ended, before he remembered that quirk was their term for superpowers, right? Well, I can do anything a spider can. I have strength proportional to my body weight and mass. Super agility, and my bones are a lot stronger, so I can take falls and move at high speeds. I can stick to walls dash. Really? Midoriya asked, wow. Just like Tsu. Who? He's talking about me, a girl said sitting at her desk. She had long dark green hair and was about as tall as Midoriya. When she spoke, she sounded as though she had a cold or built up mucus in her throat. I'm Tsuyu Ajui, but you can call me Tsu. My quirk is frog. I can do anything a frog can. Oh, wow. Peter was genuinely surprised. Our powers are based on life forms in nature. Guess we have that in common. So what? Bakugo interjected, those powers are stupid. Perhaps on their own, Momo retorted, they can be basic. However, I can predict many tactical advantages when used together. Midoriya tugged on his shirt, grabbing Peter's attention. What about that rope power? You shot sticky rope from your wrists. Oh, actually that's not a power, he said, receiving surprised looks. Those were my web shooters. Little bracelets that shoot a special substance that I made. It is laced with wet cement at the end that dries quickly after being exposed to air. It dissolves after about an hour too, so I always have to make more. Whoa! Marodiya exclaimed, pulling out his notebook and writing things down. So you found that you lacked all the abilities that a spider possesses, so you created gear to match the aesthetic you were looking for. But how would you get that much fluid into small bracelets? They would have to be compressed down for a powerful release. What kind of compounds are used to make it? He said wet cement, but that can't be the only component. Peter tried to get him to focus, but he just started ranting quietly to himself. You'll get used to that, Momo said, it's something he does all the time. Now, we should probably sit down before the homeroom teacher comes in. She took a second to count the seats. Oh, we don't seem to have an extra seat. A loud clunk got their attention as they turned to face the door. Aizawa was standing there, with an extra desk in front of him. He looked just as emotionless as when Peter met him outside. I took the liberty of grabbing you an extra desk from the storage closet. Please don't ever ask me to do anything for you ever again. But I didn't ask you. I can take the desk back. Peter quickly picks the desk up and lifts it over his head with ease. Nope. This is mine. Sorry, sir. As he carried it to the back, he wondered why he felt so afraid of Aizawa. Is this what everyone felt when he was around? Was it the mystery that was so intimidating, or that dead look in his eyes? Either way, he placed his seat right next to the last chair. Coincidentally, Momo came over and sat in that very chair, giving him a smile. Good morning, neighbor. Good morning. He sat down, letting his arms rest on the desk. Thanks for what you did back there. I was starting to get overwhelmed. My pleasure, Peter. You definitely looked like you needed help. Our classmates are enjoyable, minus a few, she eyed Bakugo, who scoffed at her and turned back around. You'll get used to them, promise. They all seem nice. It's just that telling people about my quirk was not something I did back home. Secret identities are more heavily suggested. I see. To protect loved ones, I would assume. I understand. You'll be safe here though, we have the best heroes teaching us. Aizawa stood at the front of the class, almost lazily speaking, so, let's address the elephant in the room. We have a student studying abroad for the semester. He's not an official part of the class, so don't worry about getting kicked out. He's a temporary transfer from Marvel Caliber University in America. Introduce yourself to him if you please. I don't really care, he sighed. Now, to assess his knowledge, he's getting a pop quiz. Of course, it wouldn't be fair to give it to just him, so you'll all be getting the quiz. Everyone groaned at the same time, clearly not enjoying the idea of a pop quiz. As the papers were passed out, Peter got a look at some of the questions. Relief swept over him as his paper was done in full English text. The principal must have told Aizawa he couldn't read in Japanese, which will be very helpful. Some of the questions were normal, while others were based on actual hero work. He had never taken a quiz on what it means to be a hero. In fact, the idea of it was rather skeptical. There was no grade on what it took to save someone's life, it was based more on experience. So, as he answered the questions, he simply stated what he would do if the situation was real. While it took Peter roughly 7 minutes to finish his quiz, his neighbor Momo finished 4 minutes prior. To get through a quiz that fast either meant she skimmed it or was very intelligent when it came to hero work. She flipped her paper over faster than he had seen anyone at his old school. Usually, he was the first to finish depending on the subject. This girl really must have known her stuff if she could be done that soon. Peter finished only a few minutes after her, earning a small glance of surprise from Momo. So far, they were the only two to finish while everyone else still worked. She smiled faintly, having respect for Peter and his intelligence. Finally, the bell rang from the ceiling speakers. Aizawa grabbed his supplies and walked over to the door. Parker, he said, not even looking at him, step outside with me for a moment. Even though he didn't understand, Peter did as he was told and exited the classroom with him. Aizawa carefully shut the door and stared at him. I want to address some of your answers from the quiz, he said, actual emotion in his voice now. Question 12, specifically. The question asked what you would do if you had to choose between saving 3 adults or 3 children. Choose one and the other dies. And, it's multiple choice. You didn't fill in the bubble for either of them. Instead, you drew your own bubble and wrote both. That wasn't one of the choices. Yes, it was, Peter said sternly. No, it dash. Yes, he said again, standing his ground, it was. Peter said nothing further and went back into the classroom. As the day went on, Peter made his way to the cafeteria for lunch. A lunch card was provided to him with his school outfit, so he didn't have to worry about not being able to eat. Just thinking about it, his stomach started to growl. When he left on that mission with the Avengers, he had skipped dinner rather than eating. He was rather excited after getting his own tray and food to munch on. Food was a good way to get your mind off things. He found a table at the other end of the cafeteria, where he could eat in peace. The students of Class 1A were nice, but he just needed some time to think to himself. He knew why he was putting up the act, to use the school as protection, security, and taking advantage of the resources provided. That was something Tony taught him. When you're in a situation that's more confusing than logical, you must take advantage of your opportunities to get by. For now, this was his best course of action. On the plus side, perhaps he could learn something new about being a good hero. A small clanking sound grabbed his attention as he looked up. Sitting across from him was the boy with green hair, Midoriya. He had just put his food down prior to sitting, and his face had a huge smile running across it. Midoriya stared at Peter for a moment, as if trying to figure out what to say, or if he should even say anything. It was almost like he was studying him and every detail he had to offer. Sighing, Peter smiled and waved his hand. "Hello, Izuku." "Hi," he replied, "is it okay if I sit here?" "I don't mean to be a bother or anything." Peter did want to sit alone originally, but Midoriya seemed like a nice kid and he just couldn't say no to that happy face. "Sure, it's fine with me." Midoriya turned around in his seat. Looking behind him, he said it's fine. Just as Peter gave him a confused look, two more students came closer and sat down. One was a girl, who sat next to Peter. Her hair was a short brown that went to her shoulders, and her cheeks both had small pink circles on them. It looked as though she was always blushing with that warm smile. The other student was a boy, at least a foot taller than them. His hair was deep blue, and his glasses sat firmly on his face. While Momo had an elegant vibe, this boy had more of a high-focus one. "Hi there." The girl spoke first. "Sorry to come unannounced, but we wanted to say hello to our new classmate. My name is Achiko Yururika, and you may call me Tenya Ida." The other boy jumped in. "I'm the class representative of 1A. I look forward to guiding you and our fellow students to our future as heroes." Despite their abrupt entrance, Peter smiled and laughed. They were both so full of energy, just as Midoriya was. It was hard to find people so excited to be in school like he was. Then again, this was a school for superheroes. So, perhaps it's already exciting by default. Still, it was refreshing from the usual tone of hating education. "I'm Peter Parker," he said, looking between Yururika and Tenya occasionally. "So, what can you guys do?" "Your quirks, I mean," he doubled back, looking at Midoriya. "Actually, let's aim that question at you too. I'm curious." Midoriya almost looked nervous when asked the question, while the other two seemed more into it. You'd think asking about superpowers would be more exciting for a fanatic like Midoriya. He could simply be shy about the topic, either that his powers are too weak or too strong. "Well," Yururika started, "my power is gravity manipulation. If I touch an object, I can mess with its gravity. Though I can get a little sick if I do it for too long." She rubbed the back of her neck in embarrassment. Tenya raised his hand. "My quirk is called engine. I have engines in my calves, allowing me to boost my momentum and move at super speed. They have several gears as well, so I can switch between speeds." Peter raised his eyebrows at that. Out of many of the superpowers he was aware of, that one was unique in detail. Having engines in your calves must hurt, unless they are perfectly fused with his skin. Not the traditional super speed, but it gave him identity as a hero. "Respect where it's due." "That's interesting," Peter said, "and here I am with just spider powers." "Those are really cool though," Yururika exclaimed, pumping her fists in the air. "It's such a wide range of abilities." "I have to agree." Tenya adjusted his glasses. "While your powers individually have limits, together they prove a tactical advantage as stated by our vice representative. Many of our powers take time to master and develop, much like Midoriya." "What do you mean?" Midoriya sighed, sitting up straight and locking his fingers together. "I have a special kind of super strength. I charge power into a part of my body, giving it a burst of strength that I can use. However, I can't control it just yet." He suddenly looked sad. "Whenever I use my power, I break my body. If I punch, my arm breaks. If I flick a finger, that breaks too. If not for the recovery girl, our school nurse, I'd still be in the infirmary after the entrance exam." It wasn't that his power was too weak, rather too strong even for him. His body isn't ready to handle the power he can generate. That means he must have a limit when he uses it, focusing more on skill than raw power. "That's rough," Peter said, "but hey, I think that's still a pretty cool power. Once you gain control, I bet you'll be unstoppable." Midoriya suddenly looked up, smiling at him. "Thanks, Peter. When I finally got my quirk, I was so happy. Usually they develop at a young age, but mine never did. Not until this year. That's why I can't control it yet." "I get that," Peter said, wanting to find a way to relate to him. "Actually, I got my powers last year." All three of them jumped in surprise, Midoriya especially. "What?" he said. "Wait, you too?" He confirmed, most of my life, people picked on me for being weaker, and for being the nerd of our school. I always hated it and wished I could get back at them. He sat back, recalling the events. He realized they may not understand the part about the spider, but they may understand the rest. I was walking home from a science exhibit when it happened. A car came barreling down the street, heading right for me. Suddenly I got this ringing feeling in my head that was telling me to move. I saw the car and jumped to the nearest building, but when I hit the wall, I stuck to it. So, you discovered you had a spider quirk. And this was only last year? Midoriya almost seemed happy, and genuinely curious. Wow, that's amazing. Quirks usually emerge at childhood, or not at all. I thought I was the only case of a late quirk. You said you felt a ringing in your head, Tenya asked. What does that mean? It's one of my powers, Peter pointed to his head. I call it a spider sense. To dumb it down, I get a warning anytime I'm in danger, or when the environment around me gets a sudden and abrupt change. Though, it's up to me to react when I get that warning. A danger sense? Midoriya shouted, pulling out his notebook and beginning to write. How would that even be possible? Are there spiders in nature with that sort of ability? Or perhaps he doesn't mean it in the literal sense. There could be spiders that have high senses of their surroundings, but it seems like he doesn't control when it's turned on, so how does that work for him? Which part of the brain reacts to those warnings? Perhaps his sensory nervous system reacts and processes information at higher speeds than most humans. That would make the most sense. Does he do that often? Peter asked, receiving a nod from both of his new friends. He does, Eureka replied. It's kind of cute though slightly irritating to some of the other students. She turned her body parallel to his. So, I bet you showed those bullies a piece of your mind after you got your powers. She was getting really pumped up real fast. At her assumption, Peter looked down at the table. The fact was that this wasn't the case at all. No, actually, they continued to bully me after that. What? Why? With your powers, why didn't you stop them? He sighed, looking at her sternly, but not unfriendly. I could do so many things after I got my powers. I could have thrown Flash Thompson in a locker for all the times he did to me. I could have hung him by his underwear on the school flag. I could have used my abilities to win at sports and become popular. But with all this power, to use it that way would be irresponsible. My powers shouldn't affect who I am. I didn't want to become the bully just to get back at other bullies. Eureka's enthusiasm dropped as she listened to him speak. It was sad that he never tried to get back at the people who belittle him, but it made sense why. He didn't want to become like the bullies he hated so much. It would be like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. A wise choice, Tenya stated. Abusing our abilities for selfish gain is irresponsible of us as heroes. Agreed, Peter said. We have this amazing power. So, isn't it our duty to use it responsibly? He earned nods of respect from them, a small signature that their friendship had begun. Chapter 6, I Am Here. After lunch had ended, the 4 of them walked back to class together. Peter politely listened to the stories they had to share about growing up with their powers. He found them delightful overall, minus the more depressing ones from Midoriya. At least he got a better understanding of his relationship with Bakugo, who has apparently known him since their childhood. Peter, however, chose to stay quiet about the things he's faced since gaining his abilities, having rather to listen to his friends talk instead. Entering the classroom, Peter took his seat next to Momo again, who had her legs crossed in her seat. She pushed her hair aside and looked at him, smiling. You ready for this class? Yes? He questioned, why are you asking? I get a heroics class that focuses a lot on actual heroics, but there's something I don't know, isn't there? Just as his spider sense went off, the door of the classroom burst open, smacking against the wall. A figure slides in quickly and stands at the podium. I am here to teach. The man before them was tall and extremely buff. His costume was a classic clash of red, white, blue and yellow with a long cape to match. His hair had 2 massive clumps that stuck straight up on his forehead. He smiled wide, as if it never came to an end. The entire vibe he gave off was positive, maybe even hopeful. The entrance of his supposed hero surprised Peter, even with his powers giving him a warning. On seeing the man enter, Midoriya's as well as everyone else's face lit up with excitement. Greetings everyone, he said, his voice sounding loud and proud. I heard there was a new student joining us today. You may call me All Might, the #1 pro hero. Please rise from your seat and greet yourself in the class. Do not be shy, come on up here. Everyone immediately turned their attention to Peter, minus Bakugo, who remained unfazed. His usual experience with being in the front of the class was either verbal abuse or paper balls being thrown at him. However, he didn't feel that way with this class. In fact, the looks they gave him were smiles of curiosity. There was still a lot they didn't know about Peter, and they craved the information. Standing from his seat, he made his way to the front of the class and stood in front of the podium. It was here that he got a better look at the teacher, All Might. He was a human tower, built strong and steady. Even if Peter threw his strongest punch, it likely wouldn't even faze this man. His entire atmosphere screamed superhero. The classic look, vibe, and voice told him everything he needed to know. At least he seemed friendly enough, unlike the homeroom teacher Aizawa. Hey, guys, Peter said, having met at least a few prior to this. For those who don't already know, my name is Peter Benjamin Parker. I'm studying abroad here in America. Excellent! All Might shouted, we look forward to assessing your heroic experience. Before we head out for today's class, why don't you all raise your hands and ask young Parker whatever your heart desires? A few people raised their hands, some choosing to remain quiet for the time being. Peter scanned the room, picking out the familiar faces and pointing to Mina. What was your school in America like? Mina asked as she lowered her hand. It must have been good if you were able to transfer to UA's hero program for the semester. This was a difficult question to answer, considering the school likely didn't exist. This meant he would have to make the details up to get by, or just say he doesn't want to talk about it. Well, MCU is a bit different in how it teaches. For starters, you don't need a license to do hero work, per se. All you need is the public's approval usually. I do my own thing around the city, but sometimes I train under other heroes when we team up. So, wait. Mina said excitedly, you've taken down baddies before? Even All Might looked curious now, though he could only tell by a shift in his eyebrows since he was still smiling. Yeah, Peter continued, the Rhino guy is someone I've fought before. What he's doing in Japan, I don't know. But I've had my fair share of tussles in the past. Suddenly, more people began to raise their hands. He must have sparked their interest with this new information. He pointed to a boy with 2 colors in his hair, one white and one red. The boy lowered his hand and spoke, my name is Shoto Todoroki. I was wondering how the grading system works there. It sounds like it's highly experience-based. It is, he hesitated, they believe that experience is the best teacher, so we're out in the field a lot. My mentor is a popular superhero called Iron Man. He teaches me a lot about being a hero and is a good figure in my life. Midoriya's hand shoots up. What can Iron Man do? Peter almost laughed. Iron Man has, super intelligence. What he lacks in flashy powers he makes up for with technology centuries ahead of our time. Nanotech, holograms, the works. He's one of the smartest people in the world. In his excitement, Midoriya started taking notes. While he wrote, Peter picked on another student. It was Momo, who sat in the very back. Yes, Momo? Peter went dead silent. If only for just a moment, Peter was happy to answer the questions and open up about some parts of his secret life. But when she spoke, his words were stolen from him. He tried to get something out, but he just couldn't. Instead, he looked down at the podium he was standing at as his fingers shook. Thoughts raced through his head faster than he could process, and his breathing silently increased. It was clear to her now that something about the question was bothering him, haunting his very being to the core. His words, his confidence, all of it gone with a single sentence. All Might put a hand on his shoulder, gripping it firmly but not tightly. As Peter snapped out of his funk, he quickly turned to All Might, staring at him in surprise. Everyone's drive is different, he spoke, a smile remaining but with a more serious tone. We can't always talk about what pushes us to use our extraordinary gifts. But rather than speak, we can show what it does to us. He turned to the rest of the class. Today, we'll be going to Gym Gamma for a very special obstacle course. So, grab your costumes and head to the Gamma Gym. Out of the wall, compartments began to open. Inside them were briefcases with numbers on them going from 1 to 21. The students began to get up and grab their specified cases and leave the classroom to get dressed. As everyone started moving, All Might leaned on Peter's shoulder. It's all right, he said. We all have a part of our past we wish to hide from the world. But one key element of being a hero is not to let it control our every move. I understand whatever happened was painful, but you mustn't let yourself freeze up. You must be able to keep striving and fighting for what's right. If I can teach you anything in your time here, I hope it can at least be that." Even though the words partially sounded like scolding, there was a sense of comfort in them. The gym was massive in size, almost seeming like it was bigger inside than it was outside. From the beginning to the end of the room were unique obstacles lined up for them. It wasn't traditional, however. Many of them looked more like traps ready to trick or pounce on the students. It was likely that he was trying to test their mobility in dangerous situations, recreating the havoc of a street battle. The students all walked in, each wearing their own unique costume that matched their powers and personality. Some were simple, like Mina, who wore green and purple tights with a fur collar and a mask over her eyes. Others were more complex, like Tenya, who was wearing all-white armor with openings for the engines in his calves. Midoriya's costume, however, was different. It didn't look as flashy as the others. It was blue with white lines, looking more like an exercise suit. "Man," said Midoriya, "they still haven't repaired my costume yet." "Boo-hoo, go cry in a corner," yelled Bakugo, swinging the grenade-like weapons around his arms. His suit was basic black with a red X on his chest. The more defining features were the grenade gauntlets on his arms, which likely served whatever powers he had. "It's not my fault your costume was so damn fragile." Momo came in next, her costume being a bit more casual. She wore a skin-tight torso suit, with an opening in the middle that somewhat showed off her cleavage and belly button. Around her waist were yellow straps that covered what her shorts normally would. The torso was sleeveless, and the only other thing she wore was a strap over her chest and red boots going up halfway to her knees. A higher portion of her skin was shown compared to others, but this likely had to do with her powers. Each suit worn by the students aided their abilities in some way. Momo held her arms close, almost seeming sad as she entered. No one really noticed since they were too focused on the obstacle course. Her eyes darted to the floor as something was weighing on her mind. "Momo, you okay?" She turned around and was greeted by red and blue colors. Spider-Man stood in front of her, wearing the nanosuit he debuted in earlier that day. "Peter? Is that you?" Just on hearing his name, many of the students looked over in awe. "Wow!" shouted Denki, "you look awesome, man. I love the colors. Very bright and friendly." "Thanks," Spider-Man said, smiling under the mask, "kind of what I'm going for. I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." Midoriya approached him, poking at his arm. "What are those fibers? I've never felt anything like it before." "It's flexible, yet strong." As people talked with Peter, Momo simply backed away from the group. She didn't want to disturb him any more than she may have already. However, it didn't take the arachnid long to notice the change in her attitude. Gently pushing his classmates to the side, he made his way over to her and put a hand on her shoulder. "Momo, are you okay?" She turned to him in slight surprise and forced a smile. "Yes, of course." Even though she couldn't see his eyes, she could tell he was staring him down. "Well, I just want to apologize for earlier," she said sadly. "I didn't mean to bring something up with my question. I could tell you were very upset once I had asked, and I didn't want to push you any further with my presence." "Momo, it's okay," he reassured, the white of his lenses shrinking and expanding. "You didn't know, so there is no reason to dwell, alrighty?" She smiled, releasing her arms and letting them drop. "Alright, class!" shouted All Might, standing at the very end of the obstacle course. Even though he was so far away, he was still incredibly loud. "Glad you could all make it. This obstacle course is specially designed to test your mobility when encountering a dangerous environment. You will face many disaster-based obstacles that you must overcome by any means necessary. There is no time limit, only survival. Your grades will be based on performances and the tactics you use to overcome the challenges ahead. Everyone understand?" "Yes, sir." Everyone shouted in unison. "Excellent." They get to the starting line. The students all approached the yellow line painted on the ground, with the word START written in Japanese. As Midoriya got into position, Bakugo stood next to him sinisterly. His very presence threw Midoriya off, causing him to gulp in fear. "I'm gonna fry you, Deku," Bakugo threatened. "Don't think you can beat me this time. I'm gonna win this and send you to the ground." Technically, Midoriya stuttered. He didn't say there were winners or losers. "What was that, punk?" "Nothing." He turned away, facing forward with sweat on his face. Peter eyed Bakugo with a stern look. he reminded him so much of his high school bully. If there's anything he understands about bullies, it's that they always have a reason to specifically target someone. What that reason is, maybe he can find out. "Hey, Bakugo," Peter called out, getting a nasty glare from him. "What do you want, freak?" Spider-Man's lenses shrunk. "Don't overstep. The hell is that supposed to dash?" "Begin!" A shot went into the air, and the students took off like a flurry of bullets. Tenya was the first to take the lead, as power bursts from his engines. He wasn't lying when he said he could boost his momentum, as he was making some incredible distance. Spider-Man first stuck to running, using his strength to leap himself forward and gain some ground. Sliding past him was Mina, as she generated acid from her feet and used it to skate across the ground. She winked at him, waving and moving forward. "Pretty cool, huh?" she asked him. "Very," he smiled, admiring her good sportsmanship. They were coming up on the first obstacle. It was rather simple, looking like a pile of cars that towered high. Jumping over it wouldn't be much trouble with his agility, but something seemed off about it. As he approached them, his spider sense suddenly shut off. He didn't know what was about to happen, but he only had a second to respond. Quickly he leapt into the air for safety, just as the ground suddenly shook. A sinkhole appeared just where he leapt, growing more massive with every second. It was only now he realized something vital: he left his web shooters with his other suit. Mr. Stark had to have planned for him not to have his traditional gear, right? Was it possible the nanotech could replicate his web shooters, as well as the fluid they used? His eyes darted to Mina, as she suddenly went spiraling down into the hole. She hadn't seen it prior and screamed as she plummeted. It was pitch black, and she couldn't tell where the end was. "Please, Mr. Stark," he begged to no one, "tell me you thought of everything. Please, please, please." Going on a whim, he made his classic finger gesture. The nanites suddenly pulled themselves together on his wrist, making a small circular object that rested in place. As he pressed on his palm, a web shot out from his wrist and flowed downward toward the sinkhole. It latched itself onto Mina's leg, pulling on her as her fall suddenly ceased. "Yes! I got you!" he yelled, using his super strength to pull her toward him. As she came closer, he let go of the web and held his hand out to her. She landed in his arms, wrapping herself around him as he shot another web toward the ceiling of the gym. They descended carefully and swung back to the ground, just over the pile of broken cars. "Are you okay?" Spider-Man asked, looking over Mina for any injuries. However, she simply jump-hugged him in response, causing him to lose balance and have to swing her around. "That was awesome. Thanks for the save. You're my hero once again." She kissed the cheek of his mask, making him blush underneath. "Quit flirting and get going," said a voice as it passed by them. It was Todoroki, sliding past them on ice that formed beneath his feet. It was not too different from how Mina had done it, and she looked angry about that. "Hey! That's my move!" she yelled, sliding after him on the acid she generated. Shaking his head, Spider-Man began to web-sling after them. The next course resembled a city street, with several sets of buildings on both sides of the runners. It looked more like a movie set than an actual street, but it wasn't trying to look real anyway. Students approached the scene one by one, now more on guard after the first surprise of the course. The moment his feet stepped into the obstacle's perimeter, his spider sense instantly went off. An explosion triggers to his right, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground. His hands stopped most of the fall, and he was able to get up quickly. "Are you trying to kill us?" Spider-Man shouted, watching his teacher from afar. All he got in return was a heroic laugh that echoed through the room. His spider sense sounded rapidly, and he immediately jumped from his position. Explosions emerged at every turn, forcing him to jump and leap off the buildings and surfaces he could find. Below him, he saw Todoroki using ice walls to protect himself from the explosions. Most of the other students, however, found difficulty moving around them, especially Midoriya. He had yet to use his quirk, likely because of the damage it will do to his body. The rookie hero continued to roll and leap small distances to avoid the explosions, spotting a few of the mines in the ground and simply jumping over them. Unlike the others who used their powers to avoid the traps, he had no choice but to think his way through. One mine caught the heel of Midoriya's foot, triggering an explosion behind him. The force of the blast sent him flying into the air, a scream echoing from his core. Just as he reached the peak of his flight, Spider-Man leapt his way and grabbed a hold of him, planting his feet on the wall of the nearest building. There they stuck, remaining aloft parallel to the ground as Midoriya processed what had happened. "You okay?" Spider-Man asked. "I don't know if I can do this," Midoriya cried. "Everyone has such cool abilities. But if I use mine, I'll break." "Then break!" Spider-Man shouted, earning a look of shock from Midoriya. "Cry, break, fear, and hate. Do all of it. Do it all 10 times over. And when you're broken and battered, pick yourself up and do it again. And I don't just mean this course. If people gave up every time they got hurt, the human race would be dead right now. You're smart, Midoriya. You can find a way to use your power despite breaking, and still make it to the end." Midoriya wiped the tears from his eyes, listening to Peter's wise words. It was clear that he spoke from experience as there was a pain in his voice. Peter seemed to understand pain and loss and used that to push himself forward. It was a strange thing to be jealous of, and yet he was. Wiping the last of his tears away, Midoriya gave him a look of determination and nodded. Spider-Man hopped down and placed Midoriya on his feet just outside of the obstacle area. "We don't have long to go, so let's finish this, okay?" Spider-Man asked, earning another nod from his new friend. Spider-Man and Midoriya ran beside one another, overall keeping parallel to each other's movements. The remaining obstacle area was empty, no traps or sets in sight. It was suspicious right off the bat, and only one person didn't see that. Bakugo went flying by in the air, small explosions erupting from his hands. "See you later, Deku!" he shouted, not even bothering to look at them. Peter's spider sense triggered again, and his eyes widened. "Bakugo! Wait, no can do, freak! I'm winning this thing dash, above you!" Bakugo reacted to the shadow that suddenly appeared over his head and looked up. Seemingly out of nowhere, a shower of rocks and boulders came flying down from the ceiling. A massive boulder just barely scratched Bakugo as it reached the ground, causing his momentum to change. Though he tried to recover, he was sent flying into the ground and skied a large distance. Rocks continued to descend toward the students as many panicked and ran. It was easier to pass for some than it was for others. Tenya was able to use his speed and reach the end before he could be struck, while Mina used her acid to melt any rocks that reached her. Others like Momo somehow got her hands on a shield and held it over her head to avoid damage. Many of the others, however, were forced to dodge the old-fashioned way, including Midoriya. While others were focused on the rocks, he had eyes on Bakugo, who was still lying on the ground. "Kachin! Get moving," he shouted. Bakugo tried to get up, but it seemed leg had been hurt during the fall. "Damn it," he shouted, though still managed to get up with just a small limp. A larger shadow caused everyone to look up as it formed. The boulder casting the shadow was the biggest of them all, almost looking more like a meteor. It was dropping at a terrifying rate, causing students to kick it into overdrive. "No one is gonna be able to outrun that," Midoriya cried. "It's massive." Midoriya's eyes went to Bakugo, who was still trying to limp to the finish line. Each time he tried to push his momentum with a hand explosion, his leg felt the pain of the sudden movement. This caused him to fall repeatedly, not making as much distance as he wanted. It felt as though Midoriya's heart suddenly stopped as everything went quiet. He knew Bakugo wouldn't make it on his own. If he kept going like this, he would be crushed. "Kachin," he said quietly. "Kachin." Something came over young Midoriya, making him cry once again. His legs suddenly glowed under his cloths, as the ground broke under his feet. In an instant, he went flying into the air at blinding speeds, leaving a small trail of green and red energy. Dust from the rocks followed up until he was high into the air, aiming directly for the massive meteor. His right arm charged with the same blow, as his sleeve seemed to rip right off his jacket. Everyone looked up as he went flying faster and faster toward the meteor, winding his arm up for the attack. Just as he was about to throw a powerful punch, a stray boulder suddenly struck his right arm, causing him to spin out of control. The glow in his arm completely faded, leaving it completely red and broken. He screamed from the sudden pain, unable to recover as his legs dangled in the air. They were broken too. Peter had to think fast, and he looked around at his nearby comrades. His eyes went to Todoroki, who was just about to pass before Spider-Man stopped him. "Todoroki, can you make me an ice ramp?" He stopped his movement and addressed the arachnid hero. "Sure, but what are you dash? There's no time." "Do it." Letting out a sigh, Todoroki shifted his foot and released ice from his toes. The ice built and formed into a large ram, with a few yards of runway. Spider-Man placed himself at the beginning of the runway and shot 2 webs to the ground. He pulled back on them, leaning his body backwards to the ground. "Hang on, Midoriya," he shouted as he released his feet and sent himself sliding on the ice. The ramp sent him flying upwards as he released the webs from his hands. Just saving him wasn't going to be enough, he had to do more. Whether he liked it or not, Midoriya still had one more limb to break. "Midoriya," he shouted, grabbing the falling hero's attention. "Combo!" Spider-Man passed Midoriya quickly and shot a web at his chest. As their bodies flew away from each other, the web connecting them stretched thin. Spider-Man swung his arm in a circle and sent his friend swinging back up, trading momentum with each other. "I have one more chance," Midoriya thought, charging a glow into his left arm. "I won't let you down, Peter." The sleeve ripped off just like before, his veins glowing red as his skin emitted yellow. He didn't have as much speed as before, but it was just enough. He winded up his fist and threw it at the incoming meteor, shouting as loud as he could smash. His fist collided with the meteor with a powerful burst of power. It instantaneously cracked and broke under his knuckles, causing a massive explosion of wind and rock. The power caused a few students to lose balance and cover their faces. The cracks traveled up the massive boulder as it shattered, its pieces scattering in all directions. Midoriya continued moving upward through the newly opened path where the boulder once was. There were no big chunks or massive debris, it was all small rocks and dust. His power had traveled through the density of the entire object, breaking it down completely. "Incredible!" Spider-Man muttered, just as his parachute shot from his back and slowed his descent. He didn't realize that Midoriya would be this strong, even though he said his power was super strength. It wasn't even that he stopped the boulder, it was that he was able to break it down into 1,000 pieces with just one punch. That kind of strength was something he had rarely seen before, strength that may even rival a hulking hero back home. Just as Midoriya finally started to fall, Spider-Man shot out another web and attached it to his back. The pull yanked them down slightly, but he was still able to catch Midoriya's fall safely. "Izuku, that was incredible!" he shouted down to him. Are you okay?" Midoriya gave a slight whimper in response, at least he was still alive. They descended to the ground, and Midoriya gently touched the surface. Once Spider-Man landed next to him, his parachute retracted into his back. "Ha! Serves you right, Deku!" Bakugo yelled, crossing the finish line. "I told you I'd leave you on the ground." Bakugo's expression suddenly dropped when he saw Spider-Man pick Izuku up. He cradled him in his arms like a child, the lenses of his mask shrunk to their smallest size. Slowly as not to hurt him, Spider-Man carried Izuku the rest of the way, crossing the finish line and walking straight past Bakugo without so much as a glance. The hothead simply watched in disbelief as the arachnid aided his fellow hero to victory. Once he crossed, he walked over to All Might and handed him over, placing him in his arms. "He'll be all right," All Might stated. "Recovery Girl will be able to patch him up in no time." "I thank you for coming to his aid, young Parker." Spider-Man nodded, looking over to the other students as they crossed the finish line. "Listen up!" All Might shouted, "You all did exemplary today. Your final grades for today's course will be delivered to you before the end of the day. Make your way to the showers and clean yourselves off. Good job today." Many of the students immediately collapsed to the ground, either sitting or lying down from exhaustion. Bakugo, despite his limp, was standing up and shouting as All Might carried Midoriya away. "Hey, Deku! I didn't need you to save me, you know. Don't think you can show me up like that again." Midoriya couldn't respond, but that didn't stop him. "Hey! You hear me, Deku? I didn't need you to dash." A web struck his mouth and suddenly silenced him. It stuck like glue no matter how hard he pulled to remove it. Everyone turned to face Spider-Man, who just lowered his hand. "Don't overstep," he said, then left to follow All Might. Chapter 7, Gold Standard. After returning his nanosuit to the school, Peter rushed to the infirmary as quickly as he could. He didn't realize that hero training would be that intense. No wonder the school was so difficult to get into if they pushed their students that hard. Midoriya had broken all 4 of his limbs trying to destroy that massive rock. All Might must have had a plan to protect them should something have gone wrong, otherwise all those traps and obstacles were uncalled for. The most training he did back home was with SHIELD, and even that wasn't as intense as what he just went through. Finding the infirmary room, he immediately thrusted the door open. Peter had expected to find his friend broken and battered, barely clinging to consciousness. However, Midoriya was sitting up straight, feeling his arms and legs like nothing happened. There were a few cuts and bruises, but otherwise he looked perfectly fine if not a little worn out. Izuku? Peter spoke, walking into the room. How are you feeling? Midoriya greeted him with a thankful smile. I'm good, Recovery Girl's healing quirk patched me up. It uses up my stamina though, so I'm pretty tired. With a sigh of relief, Peter sat down next to Midoriya. That training session was crazy. I didn't realize that heroics class would be so intense. But when you jumped for that rock, your power is incredible. Midoriya looked away, almost to the side. Maybe, but I can't control it. It always breaks me because my body can't take the strain just yet. Still, you were incredible. I've known heroes with super strength, and I've never seen power like that before. The strength he hasn't seen, this is true. But the expression Midoriya made prior to his fantastic jump was one Peter recognized. It was a combination of fear, adrenaline, and determination. Peter wore those colors once, on a night he couldn't forget. What confused him was why he felt those things when Bakugo was in danger. Did he care about him that much that he would break himself to save him? Bakugo treats him so terribly, it didn't make sense for him to still care about that bully. Izuku, Peter started, I have to know something. Why did you freak out like that when you saw Bakugo was in danger? It's one thing to want to save someone, but you genuinely looked concerned for him. Why do you seem to care about him? Midoriya sighed, locking his fingers together. Kacchan and I have known each other since we were kids. I've always respected him, and the kind of power he has. Kacchan was always a popular kid, and everyone thought he would grow up to be a great hero, and it went to his head, right? I guess so. But I still respect him. I know that he's better than me in every way. He's always been mean to me and I don't know why, but, Izuku, Peter said sternly, your relationship with him is not healthy. He's horrible to you, and you respect him? I just don't understand. It's not as simple as that. Maybe I think I must prove something, but I don't know. He's always made fun of me for not having a quirk, so he wasn't happy when I got one. Just like him though, I want to become a great hero. And I can't let anything hold me back. Of course, he understood what he was feeling. Peter always felt he had to prove something as Spider-Man to try and get the public to like him. In this case, perhaps it was to get Bakugo to finally acknowledge him. But it sounds more as though he would just hate him more if Midoriya became a hero. Bakugo wasn't going to give Izuku any kind of respect in the near future, and he needed to see that. Midoriya, a voice said, coming into the room, I came to check up on Yo-Dash. The man who entered looked very familiar, but it was somewhat difficult to pin. His blonde hair was long, and his chin was pointy. 2 clumps of hair hung down on his face in an almost crooked manner. His black eyes reminded him of Mina, but in a different sense. He looked frail and weak, with little to no muscle on his body. One could confuse him as a skeleton if not for his skin. On seeing Peter, the man's eyes widened in surprise and he immediately shut up. Midoriya clamped his mouth shut, the color flushing from his face. Peter looked between them, and it immediately hit him. Wait a second, All Might. He looked at the man curiously. All Might? Is that you? Damn it, Midoriya. He scolded as he closed the door. I didn't realize others would visit you. Everyone should have been in the showers. He approached the two as Midoriya slowly uncovered his mouth in shame. Yeah, it's me, kid, he sighed in defeat. I'm the symbol of peace, All Might. Peter stared him up and down, trying to process the information. He didn't look like he did before, with all his muscle and heroic vibes now gone. Could this have been All Might's true form? And how did Midoriya know about it but not the others? So, what gives? Peter asked, this a part of your power or something? I'm assuming this is your true form. Correct, he said, very few people know about my true form. I do my best to keep that on the down low. I can hold my powerful form for about 3 hours a day, the rest of the time I look like this. Only my closest friends know the truth. Then how does Midoriya know? The silence grew as neither of them really wanted to answer. This was clearly some kind of big secret that they didn't want to talk about, and they likely weren't sure if Peter could stay quiet. The bond between them was clearly deeper than they let on, and he wondered what else connected it. You know what, never mind, Peter sighed, you don't have to tell me anything. Clearly it seems important, so I'll respect the superhero code of privacy. All Might managed a small smile, nowhere near what he had during class. I appreciate it, young Parker. All Might pulls up a chair and sits down, facing him. There are things I can't tell you, but there are also things I can. Midoriya knows my secret because he caught me in this form after I saved him once. Ever since then, my path has been crossed with his. Midoriya looked away further in shame. Chin up, young Midoriya, All Might ordered sternly. It's not a big deal. The situation could have been worse if someone else had come to visit you. I had assumed everyone would follow the rules and be at the showers. Parker is a rare case, however. Sorry, Midoriya spoke softly. I didn't mean to give you away like that. Hey, Peter put a hand on his shoulder. Relax, buddy. So what do I know about his true form? I'm not gonna tell anyone. What would I even gain? He turned his head to All Might. Why do you hide your true form anyway? And why not stay in your stronger form all the time? Simple. He grabbed the bottom left corner of his shirt, lifting it up to reveal a massive wound. It looked as though a part of his body had collapsed into a single spot, most of it red and weak. I got this injury from an attack years ago. Did a real number on me, so much so that I can't hold my stronger form for that long anymore. 3 hours is all I can manage these days, nothing to be done. As for why no one knows, it's to protect them. If the public were to discover that their symbol of peace was frail and weak, they would lose faith in me. As the #1 pro hero, I must maintain my image to give people hope, to show them that there is a hero who will always smile in the face of danger. Peter nodded in awe, gaining respect for the hero before him. It made sense that his image would matter so much in this world, since people seem to love having superheroes around. Image is something Peter has struggled for ever since putting on the mask. The public hates him because of how the Daily Bugle represents him in the news, but that has never stopped him from doing what's right. In this case, it's his image that keeps them safe as well as his abilities. Peter couldn't possibly take that away, not when it was so important. Your secret is safe with me, All Might, Peter said. If your image means that much, I would never sacrifice it for selfish gain. All Might smiled. Thank you, young Parker. It was only now that Midoriya finally looked up and gave himself presence. I won't be around forever, All Might continued, so I've been training someone to take my place. Someone who has a quirk not too different from my own. And that person is Midoriya. Peter looked at Izuku, surprised but only slightly. It made sense that there would be a deeper connection between them. I strongly believe that Izuku Midoriya can succeed me and take my place as the symbol of peace for this world. That's why I train and help him grow into the fantastic hero I know he'll be. I see, Peter acknowledged. Well, I can understand why you believe in him. He's got the makings of a true hero. Midoriya looked up at him in surprise. I can't wait to see what you become, Izuku. Peter smiled. Not only do you have a lot of power, but a lot of heart too. It takes a real hero to sacrifice your own safety to help someone. You knew your body would break and you kept going anyway. That's what makes a hero, not some written exam. He smiled, giving Peter a nod as he started to cry. Quit with the waterworks, Midoriya. You're bound to run out of tears eventually. All Might stood from his seat. Young Parker, why don't you get ready for your next class and join up with the other students? We can talk more later. Peter nodded and stood from the bed, making his way to the door. Just before he left, he looked to Izuku and said, don't beat yourself up. You're going to be an awesome hero, especially with someone like All Might teaching you. He left and shut the door tight, leaving the two remaining heroes alone. I'm sorry, All Might, Izuku said, gaining his mentor's attention. I didn't mean to give you away like that. I panicked and revealed you to him, when I should have been more careful. All Might sighed. It's alright, Midoriya. He doesn't know everything, anyway. Just the stuff about me in my true form. We're lucky that he's so understanding. He seems like a good kid. Though, I wouldn't doubt if he one day finds out about One for All. What do you mean? You're worried I told him? No, I just think he seems pretty smart. He'll probably put the pieces together. He leaned in, pushing his chair closer. I also think he's a great opportunity for you. He's a rookie hero like you but has a lot of experience fighting villains. I saw the way he moved and the things he did during the obstacle course. Not only is he strong, but he's wise. I know this from when he rescued Mina Ashido from the sinkhole. He didn't need to, yet he put in the extra effort to save her. Then there was when he aided you in the explosive section, and when he teamed with you to destroy the massive boulder. His first concern is helping people and doing what he feels is right. I suggest spending more time with him and letting him rub off on you. Midoriya listened carefully to All Might's words and nodded in understanding. It was true that he respected Peter for his actions and bravery, and everything he did made him want to learn more. He was starting to become someone to look up to, despite only knowing him for a day. He admired his determination to be the best version of himself no matter who stands opposed. That's what it means to be a hero, Midoriya thought. Maybe there is a lot I can learn from him. His phone suddenly rang, sitting on the small table next to the bed. Midoriya picked it up and looked at the caller ID curiously. He answered, "Mom? Why are you calling during school?" All Might couldn't make out the conversation, only being able to hear Midoriya's side of it. They did? Well, what did they ask? Oh, really? And you said, only if I want to. Right. Midoriya looked out the window. Yes, he is, great even. But why would we? Ooh, I see, he smiled. Well then, how can we say no? Tell them it's a yes. Peter made his way back to Class 1A, where all the students had been chatting with each other. The moment he entered the room, Yurorika came running to him in a panic. How's Deku? Is he doing all right? She looked quite worried about Itsuki, however the name Deku caught him off guard. You too? Why do you and Bakugo call him Deku? She tilted her head to the side, then back again. Oh. Sorry, it's a nickname Bakugo has always called him for some reason. Deku said it was an insult, but I always thought it was kind of cute. So, he lets me call him that, and it's not really an insult anymore. I see, he responded. Deku is doing fine. The recovery girl patched him up. Yurorika sighed in relief, making Peter grin. He had a feeling she was worrying because she liked him more than what was let on. It was kind of cute, they seemed like they would make a great couple. Even just listening to them talk during lunch, their chemistry with each other was obvious. Maybe she had pink cheeks because she was always thinking of him. More likely it could be makeup, but the thought makes him smile. Peter! Mina shouted, running over to him. You and Midoriya were awesome during the obstacle course. That combo you did when you swung him in the air was so cool. She hugged him quickly, letting go not a few seconds after, and thanks again for saving me from that sinkhole. I owe you two now. Peter laughed. You're very welcome, Mina. Classmate courtesy, you know? Ah, you sure it's not because I'm so darn cute? She winked, putting a finger to her cheek. Peter blushed awkwardly, turning away from her. Let's not get into that please. I'll crush you, you bug. A digital voice suddenly caught the arachnid's attention. The sound came from one of the students' phones and was blaring rather loudly. He heard his own webs firing off as well, leading him to a few suspicions. Walking over, he peered over their shoulders and saw footage of the rhino attack from earlier. The footage was shaky, likely because it was filmed by one of the students. You filmed it? Peter asked and startled Denki, who had been holding the phone. I couldn't help it, it was too cool, he exclaimed. You were just such an awesome man. Look at this. He rewinds the footage to where Spiderman stopped the rhino from hitting Midoriya. Poor Izuku looks terrified. He said, laughing. When something in the footage caught his eye, Peter's eyes widened. Quickly he yanked the phone out of Denki's hands and moved a small distance from them. Hey! He shouted, that's my phone. Give me a second. He dismissed him, pausing and rewinding the footage to get a good angle. It took a bit of adjusting, but eventually he got a clear enough image. In the distance from where the fight had been happening, there was a humanoid figure in the sky. It was hard to tell, but the shape of the arms reminded him of a bird of some kind, perhaps some kind of eagle, or crow, or a vulture. Denki yanks the phone out of Peter's hands. Just asked next time, man. Sorry. He replied, sounding somewhat spooked. You okay, man? You don't look too hot. Taking a deep breath, Peter nodded. Yeah, sorry, I just got a little carried away. It was a lie, but a necessary one. Peter recognized that shape anywhere. It was famous to one of his worst foes. Now he knew for sure that more than just Rhino was here. He was too distracted by the fight to see Vulture lingering in the distance. His best theory is that Goblin used the Space Stone to travel back to his world and grab them. How he did it so quickly, however, is a mystery. Then again, it was daytime when Peter appeared here, so perhaps his trip here was slower than Goblin's. It made the most sense, since traveling through space was a tricky concept, especially when it was bent to do so. The end of the school day came and went, and Peter was worn out. Since he had technically been up for 2 days straight, he was beyond tired. He still didn't have a place to go, however, so he simply hung out at school for a bit. Using his adhesive powers, he stuck to the wall of the school outside, sitting a few floors up and watching the sun descend. The city was rather beautiful at this time of night, and it made him want to explore it as much as possible. Normally after school, he would head home back to his aunt. But he couldn't, because he wasn't home. Aunt May must be so worried about him since he didn't come home from school. He hadn't really had time to think about that, about the people who would miss him while he's here. It's a horrible feeling when you know people are hurting and you can't do anything about it. Aunt May, I promise I'll come back to you. He clenched his fist, holding the infinity stone that he retrieved along with his gear after school. Somehow, I'll make it back. I'm just gonna be away for a little while. I hope you can manage without me until I come home. I miss you. Hey! Peter, shouted a voice below. Looking down at the ground, Peter saw Midoriya waving to him with a smile, dressed back into his school uniform. All the other students had gone home now except for those two. Peter carefully crawled down the wall and met him on the ground, jumping the last few yards. Hey, Izuku, he greeted. What are you still doing here? I wanted to ask you something important, he grinned. The school called my mom and asked her about it. Then she called me while I was still in the infirmary and asked me about it. And thinking it over, it seemed like a good idea. What does? I was wondering if you wanted to come and live with me? Peter did a double take, making sure he heard him right. What did you say? The school was calling the parents of Class 1A students and asking them if they would like to give you residence, since you have nowhere to live. They got to my mom and then she called me. Now, here I am asking you. I figure it's a good way to repay you for everything you did for us today. You saved me from that rhino guy this morning, and you helped me pass the obstacle course. There isn't a lot I can do to return the favor except offer you a home. So, He held out his hand, a nervous look on his face. Would you like to be my roommate? It was hard to believe that after just one day, Midoriya felt Peter was someone he could trust. It seemed almost too fast. But in a way, it made sense. He did do a lot for them in just one day, so their trust in him must have skyrocketed. And it was likely Midoriya's mom would get paid for housing him, so she probably could use the money. And a place to live would be pretty good right about now, so he needs to take advantage of his opportunities. With a bright smile, Peter shook his hand. Sure, roommate. Izuku opened the door for his roommate, letting him be the first to walk into his new home. The inside of the house was nice and held a very friendly and safe vibe. The kitchen table and living area were in the same room, and the colors of the wall and floor blended well. The room looked like it had been cleaned recently, with many of the surfaces shining abnormally. Izuku's mother must have prepared for his arrival after receiving the call from the school. So, this is my house, Izuku said. Mom said we have an air mattress for you, and we can set it up in my room. He closed the door behind him. Mom. We're home. Coming, a voice sang from the other room. There was a bit of a scuffle before the small woman finally entered proudly. She was about as tall as Izuku was, with long dark hair just past her shoulders. She didn't seem as fit as her son was, of course, but that didn't matter. She still held a big smile on her face, as she walked up and shook Peter's hand with joy. It's very nice to meet you, Peter. I'm Izuku's mother. Peter happily shook her hand in return, giving her a warm smile. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm so sorry my residence here was thrown on you last minute. There was a problem with the papers, so my residency was never filled out and I feel really bad that you're doing all this for me. Nonsense! She exclaimed. Izuku said nice things about you. I know it's only been one day, but he seems to trust you despite that. And I trust my son's opinion. Besides, you seem like a nice boy. She clapped her hands together. We're going to be having dinner in a little bit. I'm just going to get started on it. I can help if you want. No, it's quite alright, Peter. But thank you for offering. Izuku can show you where you'll be sleeping, and I'll get started on dinner. If Izuku's mom was anything like his Aunt May, then her kindness would not take no for an answer. Alright, it's your house, Mrs. Midoriya, he sighed peacefully. We'll just get me set up then. With a friendly wave, Izuku led Peter out of the living area as his mother started for the kitchen. She was grateful that Peter seemed like a nice enough boy. In fact, he almost gave off the same vibe Izuku did. Perhaps because they were both young boys striving for the same goal to become great pro heroes. Truthfully, she took him on out of kindness, without really knowing much about him. That's why she needed to call Izuku, who she hoped had interacted with him. She can easily dissolve the residency if it doesn't work out, but hopefully it won't come to that. Izuku opened the door to his room and walked inside, nearly tripping over the new air mattress set up by his mother. So, don't judge me, okay? Peter didn't know what he meant until he had walked into the room itself. The walls were decorated with All Might merchandise. Posters, action figures, and other forms of content were scattered about the room. He wasn't too surprised, after all he had quite a few Avengers posters in his room back home. Wow, Peter said with a smile, keep this stuff long enough and you can sell it for a lot in 10 years' time. Izuku had expected him to make fun of his obsession with the hero All Might, but he felt relieved that Peter had taken a different route. Yeah, well, All Might has always been my idol since I was a kid. He inspires me to be a hero, so being trained by him has been a dream come true. I know the feeling, Peter replied. I always admired Iron Man since I was little too. Once when I was young, there was this robot attack on the city. I was out with my aunt and uncle, and at the time I loved Iron Man so much that I was wearing his merchandise. I had on an Iron Man helmet and hand blaster and pretended that I was him. The fun didn't last when one of those robots approached me. I was scared, of course, but I felt a bit stronger wearing that helmet. I thought that maybe if he couldn't see my face, then he'd think I was Iron Man and run away. I lifted my hand to threaten a blast, and it just stared me down. But then, suddenly, a figure landed behind me. He blasts the robot down with one hit, then turns to face me. It was Iron Man himself, standing over the destroyed robot. Just as he prepared to fly off back into the fight, he looked at me and said, "Nice work, kid." Izuku listened carefully to his story and noted how similar they were. Izuku also used to wear All Might merchandise to feel powerful. It made him feel safer in the world. I loved heroes ever since then, Peter continued, and I never forgot the feeling of wearing that helmet and feeling more powerful than Peter Parker ever could be. So, when I created my costume, I made sure to include a mask. So that no matter how weak I may feel, Spider-Man could be strong. I get that, Izuku said. My costume is kind of like All Might's appearance too, at least around the mask. Pretending to be him made me feel strong as a kid. When he first appeared as a hero, he was saving 100 people every 10 minutes. He made people feel hopeful again, and I wanted to be just like that. I wanted to give back to the world what All Might gave to me. Peter sat down on the air mattress, gesturing to Izuku to sit next to him. There was only a second of hesitation before he obliged and sat with him. Once he had, Peter placed a hand on his shoulder. Must have been crazy finding out about his true form, huh? He asked. Yeah. Izuku sulked. It was kind of crazy, but I still respect him just as much, if not more than before. He's the gold standard for what a hero needs to be. Maybe, Peter removed his hand, but you're the gold standard for the hero you need to be. Izuku didn't have any more words after that. He hadn't found that many people who believed in him as much as Peter had, despite only knowing him for a day. Even then, he could tell their friendship was off to a good start. Izuku. His mother called from the kitchen, "Can you help me set the table?" "Sure thing," he shouted back, standing from the mattress. "You can get yourself comfortable, I'll be back in a bit." Just as Izuku left the room, Peter's expression had dropped. Reaching for his bag, he unzipped it and looked at the contents inside. The Reality Stone was sitting atop his classic suit and web shooters, glowing faintly against the fabric. The stone rested gently against the suit's emblem, almost replacing it. Peter seemed to stare at it forever as its glow came and went like a heartbeat. Izuku was kind enough to let him into his home and give him a roof over his head. But whether he liked it or not, he had to keep secrets from them. With villains like Rhino and Vulture still out there somewhere, he knew he was the only one that could find and stop them. He couldn't let anyone else get involved with this conflict. This was his war to fight, and his alone. The woman sat on the edge of the building as the moon hung in the sky. The wind was blowing against her face, making her hair flow in the air. She listened to the sounds of the city coming from below, almost hypnotized by it. There was a sense of enjoyment listening to life take its course. The sounds of car horns, people talking, and lights flickering. In its own way, it was beautiful. A burst of purple smoke emerged on the roof behind her. Revealed from it was the large green monster, wearing a golden gauntlet on his hand. His fists were clenched, and his eyebrows lowered as far as they could go. We need to talk dash. Shoo, she said, holding up a single finger. Listen to all of that. Down on the streets are thousands of people, thousands of lives. Isn't it amazing? No, Goblin retorted, they're pathetic, going about their dull lives, never to achieve anything. What's wrong with being dull? She smiled at him. What's wrong with being normal? Some people just want to live the simple life. They just want to grow up, marry, have kids and work. And that's okay if that's all they want. Down there are thousands of lives, all happening at the same time. One man just got a promotion, the other just got married. One woman just got pregnant, another won a spelling bee. To each of them, their experience is their own. You must have some kind of respect for that. Respect is not why I'm here in this world, he scolded. I am here for one purpose, and I can't achieve it so long as Parker lives. Machem, I see. And what exactly do you want? To rule the world? To kill all of your enemies? Silence fell between them. Killing, she continued, is that all you think about? You can achieve so much more with a little mercy. I have no time for mercy, he shouted, the stone on his gauntlet glowing and fire escaping his eyes. Mr. Osborne, please relax. I can assure you that I can get what you want without killing anyone. If you kill in this world, you'll have 20 pro heroes on you before you can even blink. This is not a world where brute force alone can always win. If you want proper navigation to victory, you need someone with a plan. She placed a hand on her chest. That's me. Goblin let out a sigh of smoke, relaxing himself. What exactly is your plan, then? She stood from her spot, balancing on the edge and watching the cars drive by below. We'll have to pull a few strings. Chapter 8, Drowning in Guilt. The three of them laughed and talked at the table, sharing stories that brought smiles to their faces. Izuku's mother began to really enjoy Peter's company around the house. He was kind, and always did chores when he was asked to. He even chose to help with tasks that weren't his responsibility. Having someone around to share in Izuku's passions and dreams had been nice for them. My goodness, that is adorable. Peter exclaimed, he really did that? He did. Mrs. Midoriya confirmed, I would pretend to be a damsel in distress, then little Izuku would burst in saying I am here. Izuku blushed in embarrassment, nearly hiding his face. Come on, Mom. He didn't need to know that. Oh, I did. That made my day. I'm just picturing a tiny All Might now, beating up bad guys twice his size. And imagine his voice is high-pitched when he speaks. They burst out into laughter, Izuku the most of the three. That would be adorably terrifying. Mrs. Midoriya looked at the time, and picked her plate off the table. It's getting late. You two should go to bed so you can have your rest for tomorrow. They both smiled and picked up their plates. Okay, thank you for dinner, Mrs. Midoriya. My pleasure, Peter. If you like, I can finally let you help with dinner tomorrow. His eyes lit up. That would be great. Peter stretched his arms and let himself fall onto the air mattress and bounced a few times. His head landed directly on the pillow, feeling a surge of comfort through his body. Letting out a sigh, he put his hands behind his head and stared at the ceiling. It had been a long day today and he was glad to finally rest. You seem tired, Izuku said as he walked into the room and shut off the light. You going to be all right for tomorrow? Oh, totally, Peter replied. Today's class was just tiring. Too much weightlifting, not enough thinking. My muscles just hurt. He turned his head to him. We have that rescue course tomorrow, right? Those are always fun. Definitely. Izuku jumped onto his bed, climbing under the covers. So, we better get some sleep. Sure thing. Good night, Izuku. Good night, Peter. Izuku pulled his overs to his shoulders and rested his head on the pillow, turning his body away and gently closing his eyes. As he drifted off into sleep, Peter continued to stare at the ceiling with a blank expression. It wasn't until he knew his roommate was asleep that he finally got out of bed. He grabbed his bag and threw it over his shoulder, checking to make sure his costume and gear was inside. Quietly he opened the window of the room, looking back at Izuku one last time before he leapt out into the night. It had been more than a week since his arrival to the new world of heroes and superpowers. Much like his own world, this one felt like a comic book had come to life. He's always hearing about heroes on the morning news, sometimes even on talk shows. Very few heroes back home were on talk shows often, then again image here is a lot more important. A hero's entire career may rely on how the public views them based on their acts, looks, or words. They're essentially a new breed of celebrity. He wasn't quite used to that sort of thing yet. Leaping into the air, the arachnid hero landed and flipped into a shoulder roll. He continued this pattern over and over, jumping from each rooftop. After getting used to using his nanosuit in class, he realized how different it was from his classic costume. The nanosuit could bend and shape itself with every movement Peter had made, while his classic suit was fixed on its shape. Still, wearing it again gave him a sense of home, since it's one constant he's had since ending up here. Making a new mask wasn't difficult either, just tedious. The only chances he had to work on it were when Izuku was out of the house or staying after school to train more. He hated keeping secrets from the people giving him a home, but it was necessary. He landed on the next rooftop, his feet planted into a puddle. The splash got all over his boots, causing him to finally stop and take a breather. It was late at night, where the city was the liveliest. He took a moment to look over the ledge and admire the streets below. Even though he still couldn't read Japanese, he had started to recognize a few of the letters and symbols. Specifically, he knew when something was either casual or not, or when something related to a type of subject. He had planned to get a tutor from the school to teach him how to read in their language. It would make things a lot easier for him. His spider sense suddenly goes off, making him do a 360 turn. The danger didn't seem to be directly around him, so something about the environment must have changed suddenly. Quickly he shot a web and zipped himself over to the next roof, performing a quick front flip and landing with his heels together. He squatted on the ledge, looking down at the streets and scanned it for anything strange. It was then he spotted a familiar face. He recognized her by her orange hair tied in a ponytail. Down on the street below walked Itsuka Kendo, the girl he had met in the hall on his first day. She was dressed in a casual outfit consisting of a blue skirt, tank top and black collar jacket. He wondered what she had been doing out this late at night. The current time was close to midnight, and they had school early the next day. Most students would either be sleeping or studying right now, so what was she doing out at this time of night? He wondered if it was a coincidence that his spider sense went off, leading him to spot Kendo. He went with his gut and stuck to a building wall high above her, following her closely. It almost made him feel like a stalker, which would make an awkward conversation if he was spotted. Kendo stopped just in front of an alleyway, a sudden chill going down her back. She looked around and tried to find the source of her paranoia. All she could see were cars and people walking by, but she could feel something else entirely. Peter had felt it as well, like the air suddenly got moist. True, it had rained earlier that day, but this felt different to them. A puddle began to grow on the ground, coming from the alleyway. It reached Kendo's foot and soaked her shoe. Ugh, come on! She groaned as she pulled her foot out of the puddle, only to find the water floated with it. The water suddenly formed into a hand and grabbed her ankle. She screamed as she was pulled quickly into the alleyway. Spiderman leapt from the ledge and shot out a web, swinging down into the alleyway. Just as his momentum started going up, a sudden blast of water sent him straight to the ground and soaked his costume. Spiderman coughed out water as he got to his feet. Ah geez. Now I need to wash this. He held his head as his spider sense continuously went off. In front of him was a man wearing a deep blue shirt and casual pants. His arm was held up, and it turned to water further down the arm. The water he created wrapped around Kendo's head, holding her above the ground. Good to see you, Webhead, the man said. Hydroman, this seems a bit below you, he retorted. I figured the worst you did was ruin people's laundry. Though, that alone is still cruel and means you are a sadistic jerk. Don't think that I don't remember what you did to my costume during winter. I suggest you take a few steps back, otherwise I'll drown this pretty little face. Kendo struggled to hold her breath, her cheeks filled with air as she held her neck with one hand and attempted to tear away the water with the other. Come on Morris, she may be a tall glass of water, but she's more Palm Springs while you're tap. You want her? Come get her. He reached into his belt that was hidden under his costume, pulling out a small pellet and clenching it tight in his fist. With his other hand he shot a web behind Hydroman and pulled himself forward. Morris turned his other hand to water and formed a fist, throwing it straight for the webhead. Their fists collided, and Spider-Man's hand got stuck inside the liquid. Got you. Spider-Man said, crushing the pellet in his hand and quickly opening it back up. The web fluid inside suddenly expanded inside Hydroman's aqua fist, growing up the inside of his arm. He threw Spider-Man to the side and attempted to shade the webs out of his arm. The panic forced him to drop Kendo, who fell to her knees and coughed out water that went up her nose. The web reached Morris's shoulder, just where the water met his skin. His arm suddenly stuck to a nearby wall while trying to shake off the webs. Kendo! Spider-Man lifted her to her feet. Time to go. Kendo coughed, barely opening her eyes as they were still in pain. Peter? Not so fast! Shouted Hydro Man as his other fist turned to water and shot toward them, stretching a great distance. Spider-Man grabbed Kendo and jumped into the air. He bounced from wall to wall and made his way up the building. Hydro Man's water fist followed them as high as it could but eventually stopped just as they reached the roof. He set Kendo down for a moment, looking her over and putting a hand on her cheek. Hey, come on. Keep your eyes open, Kendo. Focus on my thankfully dry costume. She blinked a few times, finally regaining her vision. Peter? Is that you? What are you doing here? Well, he said awkwardly, it's complicated. Right now, we need to get some distance between us and Hydro Man. Can you stand? She grabbed onto his shoulder and tried to pull herself up. She was still weak but still managed to stand up straight, if not a little off balance. It won't take him long to break free, he warned. We need to get moving. A pillar of water suddenly shot up into the air, startling the young heroes. Quickly, Spider-Man picked Kendo up and jumped off the roof as the water followed them through the air. He began to web-sling over the city, his momentum weighed down by the extra passenger. What does he want from you, Kendo? I mean, besides your charm. Spider-Man shouted over the wind. I don't know. She shouted back, I've never seen him before. Have you? Not relevant. That's very relevant. Spider-Man pushed his foot off a building and sharply changed his directions, taking a left turn onto the next street. The sudden pace change made the pillar of water crash into a wall and fall to the ground. He continued to web-sling and finally gained more distance between him and his enemy. You have to think, Kendo. Why would someone come after you? Did anything happen recently that you're not telling me? Anything at all? Did you, I don't know, leave the faucet on? She thought about this for a moment, and a thought came to her. No, but, hold on. He parked them on the roof of another building, far away and hidden from their hunter. Kendo took a moment to adjust herself and regain her composure. Once she reached her hand into her pocket and pulled out a small brown cloth bag. It was tied together with a string that was woven in with it. I found this in the street today and put it in this bag. It looked important. She carefully undid the strings and opened the bag. Inside looked a familiar yet distinctive object. Sitting at the bottom of the bag was a crimson stone, not too different in detail from the golden glow that was the reality stone. This one held a more condensed and dangerous power as he recognized it to be the Power Stone. Unlike its golden brother, this crimson monster can boost the ability of its user. At its full potential, it can even grant the user omnipotence. How did you get this? Spider-Man asked, hovering his hands around the bag. It was lying in the street. I didn't know if it belonged to someone, but it looks expensive. I was on my way to take it to the station and turn it in, hoping that the police could find the owner. She eyed him curiously. You seem to know what it is. Is it yours? Without warning, he takes the bag from her, taking a moment to inspect the object in more detail. It almost looked like a ball of fire trapped ironically behind cloth. He was thankful that Kendo hadn't figured out how to use it, or even know what it was. Peter, are you going to answer me? She asked again, just what is going on? Is that stone what the water villain is after? He tripped over his words. Let's worry about that later. Tying the bag tightly, he placed it against his waist and webbed it, sticking it perfectly to his suit. Hey! I just bought that bag. She scolded. I'll buy you a new one. Right now, we need to look out. He pushed Kendo to the side just as a heavy stream of water collided with his chest, sending him flying to the other side of the roof. He hit the ground with a thud and just barely managed to stay on all fours. Hydro Man landed on the roof with his fist transformed into water as he approached the arachnid slowly. I'll be taking that stone now, bug, cough arachnid. Someone please get that right. Cough. Hydro Man readied his fist and pointed it at the young hero. I'm gonna enjoy killing you, kid. Then you, my friend Cough, I need a therapist. He fired the aquatic fist at his target and expected an easy kill. However, just as it reached him, a massive hand suddenly expanded and covered them like a shield. Spider-Man looked up and saw Kendo kneeling above him, her hand having grown 6 sizes larger and stopping the water from hitting them. She struggled to get to her feet and push back against the villain as Spider-Man stood up as well. "You okay?" she asked him, barely managing to block all the water. "Yeah, I'm okay. Just don't move." He shifts himself closer to her and aims his arm over her shoulder. His left eye closes as he aligns the center of his wrist with Hydro Man. A small web bullet fires off and smacks the villain in the face, cutting off his stream of water. Hydro Man cried out in shock and pain as he attempted to pull the webs off. In this moment of distraction, Spider-Man picked Kendo up and leapt over the edge of the roof. He spared no hesitation in web slinging the pair as far as he could. Making one more powerful leap, Spider-Man brought himself and Kendo into a dark alley and climbed up the side of the wall. He found the darkest corner and held Kendo against the wall with one hand, shielding her with the other as he remained as close to her body as he could without contact. "Keep your voice low," he whispered, "and don't move." Her heart was beating too fast from the adrenaline. She tried to slow her breathing, but it made her chest hurt. She needed to find something to focus on and calm her down. That's when he realized how close Peter was to her. Their chests were just an inch from touching one another. She hadn't been this close to someone before, much less a boy her age. It caused the blood to rush to her cheeks, but at least managed to take her mind off the immediate danger. She wasn't going to scold him for being so close, after all he was trying to protect her. Hydro Man came flying across the streets, looking around the area for his targets. "Come on out, heroes. I'm not gonna hurt ya. Hand over the stone and the girl goes free." Her breathing sped up again, fearing interaction with the mysterious villain. Seeing her panic, Spider-Man held the side of her head. "Kendo, it's going to be okay." Peter slowly moved his hand up to his mask and removed it, placing it gently on her shoulder. He locked eyes with her and held the side of her head, his fingers running through her hair. "Just focus on me, okay?" Though her chin quivered, she managed to calm herself down again. This was the first time she had seen his face, despite meeting him a week prior. His gentle brown eyes soothed her and relaxed her heart rate. She finally allowed her shoulders to slump and release their tension, letting her head fall back. Hydro Man finally grew bored and stormed down the street, setting off a few car alarms. Once he was sure that he was gone, Peter grabbed Kendo and brought them to the ground by a web. "Peter." She started as she took the mask off her shoulder and stared at it, then at him. "What's going on? Who was that guy? What does he want with that stupid stone? And why are you dressed up like that?" He rubbed the back of his neck, just barely avoiding her gaze. "It's a bit of a long story. I can't really explain it." "Well, try to." "Basically, you're right. That guy wanted the stone and he's not the only one. I need to keep it out of their reach." "Why you? Why not leave it to the police?" Peter sighed. "Because the police don't know what they're up against. It's complicated. You can't go out fighting villains." She scolded. "You're a student at Udata High School. You don't have your hero's license yet. If you get caught, you could be sent to jail." "I'm used to that," he retorted, "and I'm aware of the risks. But I have to do this myself." "Why?" "Because it's my war," he shouted, startling her. "These are my enemies and I brought them here. It's my fault. So, I must be the one to fix it and stop them from hurting people. I don't care if I don't have a license. A hero doesn't wait to act. It's illegal to act. I know. And I don't care. I'm going to keep doing this and I need to not tell anyone." She turned away in disbelief, crossing her arms in thought. "Kendo, please," begged Peter, "you can't say anything about this. I saved your life, you owe me." It was true that he did save her, despite not having to. It's not that she didn't admire what he was doing. He felt responsible and just wanted to make it right. If she could, she would probably be doing the exact same thing and taking out bad guys. The problem is that it's not so simple. She didn't want Peter getting caught by the police and arrested for trying to do the right thing. "Peter," she began, Look, I admire what you're doing, and I get it. But the police will come after you if you get caught. If they catch you, you'll do time in jail. It's just how the law goes. I can't worry about the law if people are going to get hurt." His retort stopped her at every turn, and she was running out of options. She wasn't sure if she could live with the guilt, knowing that he would be out here fighting villains illegally. The thought of him going behind bars pained her, especially if she could stop it. Kendo locks eyes with Peter and looks at him sternly. I just need time to think about this. Find me tomorrow at school, and we can talk about this then, okay? He understood why she was being so cautious. Doing hero work without a license was punishable with jail time. It wasn't likely that he would be able to convince her to change her mind right now with adrenaline still pumping through her system. A night of sleep might be the best option. Okay, we'll talk about this in the morning, he said, carefully taking the mask out of her hands and pulling it over his head. Kendo, you need to understand that the world won't wait for you. Spider-Man leapt into the air and swung away, leaving her by herself. She held her arms against the cold of the night as she tried to process all that had happened. What he's been doing is clearly illegal. The logical move is to call the police and tell them what's been happening. If she does that, however, Peter will be arrested and his career as a hero will be put to a stop. It's one thing if it was a total stranger, but this is someone she knew. They weren't all that close, but he was still her schoolmate. Would it really be fair to just turn him in like that? She just needed time to think. A night of rest should do her some good. Kendo returned to her home and went straight to her room, collapsing onto the bed. She wished she had never picked up that stone. If she hadn't, she never would have found out about Peter's nightly trips of heroism. It would be so much easier if she was oblivious to it all. Of course, she could pretend to not know. However, the guilt would be too much for her to bear eventually. Trying to keep a secret like that would break her. At the same time, it's not so easy to just tell the police when the person involved is someone like Peter. He's kind, and always does what he believes is right. It was clear by the way he spoke that he wasn't doing this for fame or thrill. He was doing it because he truly believed that it was the right thing to do. If she was to be perfectly honest with herself, she admired that about him very much, but she knew that what he was doing was wrong. She just wished turning him in didn't have to be the only option. Then again, maybe it didn't. The young night turned old and gray, leaving behind a sun to carry its memory. The sky lit up orange and guided the students of U.A to the school. Peter and Izuku were walking together like they always had. However, something about Peter seemed off. He wasn't as talkative as he usually was with Izuku. Instead, he was quiet and reserved, choosing to keep his eyes on the ground rather than what's ahead of him. Peter? Are you okay? Izuku asked, snapping him out of his funk. What? Oh. Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't get a lot of sleep last night, he laughed nervously. Really? Well, that's a bummer. You might want to have an energy drink before class or something to be safe. Don't want you falling asleep during rescue training. Peter nodded and attempted to fake a casual look as he kept his eyes forward. It was only then that he noticed the orange-haired girl walking a few yards in front of him. She seemed to have the same vibe that he was giving off. He didn't think he'd see her until they were in the school building, but perhaps this was a good opportunity. I'm gonna go talk to someone, Peter said, not giving Izuku time to answer as he darted forward. Kendo! He called out, making her stop in her tracks and turn to face Peter. Her expression was of sadness. She clearly had a lot on her mind since the night before. Kendo, Peter continued, we should talk about last night. I gave it some thought, Kendo stated, and I'm willing to let what I know slide on one condition. What's the condition? She took a step toward him, being almost as close as they were the previous night. I need you to stop. Peter looked dumbfounded. What? I'll forget about your trips through the night if you stop them entirely. I truly believe that what you were doing was noble, and I admire it. Really, I do. But if you go to jail because of this, and I didn't do anything to stop it. She looked away, her eyes becoming glossy. I couldn't live with myself. He knew where she was coming from. She has this power inside of her, and she wanted to use it to do the right thing. If she didn't and something terrible happened, it would feel as though it was because of her. Should there be anything in this world that he understood, it was that when you have great power, it also comes with great responsibility. Okay, he said quietly, I'll stop. She looked back at him, smiling brightly. Thank you, Peter. I'm sorry to have to be the one to burst your bubble, but I just want you to be safe. Please don't hate me. Peter suddenly pulled her in and gave her a warm hug, his hand on the back of her head. I don't hate you, Kendo. Her face turned red as she hugged him back, feeling the weight in her throat finally fade away. Guys? They both turned to face Izuku, who just started to reach them on his walk. We don't want to be late. Right. Peter said as he let Kendo go, let's get going. Kendo smiled, staying at Peter's side as they walked. It may have been an awkward silence for the rest of the trip to school, but at least she felt like she had done something right. Even though Peter had a smile on his face, inside he was hurting. If there was one necessary crime he hated to commit, it was lying. And that's it. If you're hyped for more, smash that like button. Let's hit 100 likes and keep this legend growing. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because the next part is going to be even crazier. That's it for now, stay legendary, and I'll catch you in the next one.